We be live. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Before we start, make sure you like the stream. I'm not going to even say hi. Before we say hi to each other, like the stream so that more people end up seeing the show. And let me know in the live chat, please, that you have liked the stream. Please confirm. Confirm. Thank you so much. All right. Hi. Now we can say hi. Let me actually remove
Oh,
this idea.
what a rookie
Oh,
move.
yeah.
Got the echo going
No,
on.
that's actually on purpose, so I could check if the audio is coming through. That's actually on purpose. I do that now.
Excuse me. Excuse me, sir.
Okay. Oh, yeah. People are saying yo, yo, yo. See, that it's confirming that he has liked the stream. And oh, by the way, we have a new member and Angel. Let's get to
Ooh.
Angel. And thank you,
I know.
VA, for becoming a member. And our
First,
Angel supporting our. Yeah, go
we
on.
must always address our angel.
Oh,
Angel, thank you so much for the $100 super chat. Thank you so much for supporting our work and our community every single week. Because what I want people to understand is about when you support the work of Atheist Republic, you're not just supporting the team that makes everything we do possible, but really you're giving back to the many people who are dissidents or free thinkers in countries where they are not free to have a community where they can feel represented and where they can be true to themselves. So that's who you're really supporting. And what I love about our community around the world is that that is something that they really, really value. So thank you, Angel, for being one of those people. Saying, good morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the day so far. Let's all enjoy the stream, good or bad news. Because based on this title, yeah, we're starting off with some bad news. But these are very, very, very important topics that we need to talk about and raise awareness about around the world, because a lot of people don't know that this is how real it gets in some places. Zaid is saying, greetings to people of the Republic. Greetings to you, Habibi. Good to see you again. I would just like to say that I am privileged to be sent videos of the underground metal concerts that Zaid goes to in his country. It's pretty
wow.
cool, and it looks like a good time.
Be careful, Zaid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it safe? Okay.
But yeah, and D, where was her? She was saying, hello everyone, it's news time. That is a good reminder that if you somehow showed up on this stream and you don't know what we're doing here or what's going on, welcome to the Atheist Republic News Show. Atheist Republic is a registered 501c3 charity in the United States, and one of our programs is this news show where we talk about religion, secularism, and atheism related news from around the world every single week, so that we can build an international community that cares about the issue of secularism and free thought and freedom of belief around the world. Because people need to understand that this is not a fight that we fight in one place, in one country. This really is a global struggle towards a better, more prosperous future, towards liberalism, towards freedom, and towards free expression, all of which are very, very critical in a free society, critical in promoting free thought, critical in promoting critical thinking, which helps us then bring forward progress and prosperity. You know, these are all key things, and this is what we're here to talk about today.
This, and as Spacely is pointing out, that this whole organization and everything what we have built is just an excuse for me and you to just come and rant about things, which is kind of like accurate, right? Like, yeah, like
Honestly,
the whole.
you're not telling a lie.
Yeah, we build an entire company around this to be able to do this. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, you did, and then I joined to help provide the support. So, and Monox is saying, this is my first AR live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. That's exciting. Yeah, so we have a lot to cover this week. We're covering stories, let's see, in Pakistan, France, Russia, the US, and Tajikistan. I'm going to be honest, you guys. Most of the stories this week are pretty rough. There's some really bad bad things that happened recently. But when I pick the news, because I pick what we're going to talk about, I really want to talk about things that I think are important. And that doesn't always mean that they're going to be easy. Oftentimes they're quite difficult. But stay tuned for the last story on Tajikistan, because it is so interesting and unexpected, and actually something that I have been wanting to find an excuse to talk about for a long time. And now we actually have like a full-blown news story that gives us reason to talk about it. So yeah, should we go ahead and
Well,
get
we have
started?
a new member. Do you want to
Oh,
address some of the?
Idris. Wait, where is it? Oh, here we go. Idris just became a new member. Well, technically, Idris has been with us for a long time. Idris, we recognize your commitment to this community for years now. But Idris is saying, no longer struggling financially, happy to join back as a member. Oh, thank you, Idris. And that is a good reminder. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, this is a good reminder not to support us financially. If you're struggling financially, please, there are other ways to support us financially. If you're struggling financially, please do not support anybody financially unless you're completely in a good place. There are other ways for people who don't want to use money to support us. There's the liking, the leaving the comment after the show is over, sharing our videos, recommending our channel to people. Those are some free ways that you can support our channel. And thank you, Idris, for being financially responsible and to remove your membership. Remove your membership when you're struggling financially. That is the smart thing to do. You're being financially responsible. Good job. I'm proud of you. Thank you.
And let me be clear. We very much value financial security here at Atheist Republic. We all hope that everyone is working towards financial freedoms, okay? Pay on your debts above your minimum monthly payments, guys, okay? Cut those credit cards, honey. Although most of our audience is like not even from America, so they're not addicted to debt the way that we are. Anyways, are you ready to get started, Armin?
Yes. So we cannot. It seems like I can't clap most of today. Like today's the news is all mostly bad, except the last news I can clap. Can I clap for any of these?
Well, I don't know. We could clap for the first one because we're going to dunk on a bunch of mob murderers. Yes.
Okay. So we do not support what's happening here. We're just done. We're supporting. We're clapping for our reaction to it. Okay. This is not a These clappings are not a celebration of what's happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Okay. Yeah. Good. First news. Pakistan's
descent into madness. Blasphemy allegation leads to brutal lynching. Oh my gosh. So there was another very, very extreme, very public lynching, blasphemy lynching in Pakistan recently, and the details are crazy. Okay. In a shocking display of religious extremism, a Muslim mob in Pakistan's Swat Valley stormed a police station, seized a man accused of blasphemy, and lynched him. The victim, Mohammed Ismail, a tourist visiting for Eid al-Adha, when he was accused of desecrating a Quran. The incident escalated rapidly after a mosque loudspeakers called for locals to gather, leading to the violent attack. As regional police officer Muhammad Ali Ghanpur described, quote, after initially rescuing the man from a mob, the police took him to a station in Madyan. But announcements from mosque loudspeakers asked the locals to come out. The mob's actions, which included burning the police station and the victim's body, have sparked outrage and renewed concerns about Pakistan's blasphemy laws and the prevalence of religiously motivated violence in the country. Authorities have launched an investigation to identify and arrest those responsible for this horrific act. Okay, so let's give a little more detail. And I'm glad that Young Atheist isn't in the chat today because he's in Pakistan and perhaps has more insight into details that are not available in the English speaking media, right? So there was a man, and I can't remember what region of Pakistan he was from, but he was on some domestic tourism, right? And so he was visiting this region known as SWAT, and it's not really clear what happened based on the reports that I have read, but at some point, he's accused of desecrating the Quran. And all hell breaks loose. Like I really sometimes we get a little bit more insight into like what was behind the allegation or the accusation. Maybe there was a WhatsApp message or something. With this, I really don't have a clue. But for whatever reason, he was accused of desecrating a Quran. So a mob gets incited against him. Yeah, Young Atheist is saying that he was from Punjab. Thank you. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Possibly Lahore. And so this tourist begins getting attacked by a mob. Somehow or another, the police rescue him and they take him into custody and they go bring him to the police station. Well, a lynch mob gets incited because the loudspeakers of the mosques start announcing what happened. They start announcing what happened and ask the locals to come out. Basically, the announcements from the mosques start inciting a lynch mob. And this lynch mob goes and attacks the police station. They set the police station on fire. Several officers were injured, that was my understanding. I believe the police station is basically destroyed. I'm not completely sure. And they get their hands on this man. And this man is then beaten to death and his body set on fire. Again, this guy's just like a random tourist on holiday for Eid. This is how his Eid holiday ended. And the videos of this lynching are all over social media. It's not hard to find, and it is brutal. It's actually really bad that I make myself go watch these videos. It's horrible. It's really, really horrible. Like, it's really crazy and bizarre to see like a mob of like hundreds of men, all of them with their phones out, and they're all filming themselves like as they're spraying more gasoline on his body, stomping on his body, like his arms are still moving while he's on fire. It's horrific. Like really, 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 really horrific. Yeah, Kenny's saying, I'm not sure I want to see this. You don't want to see it. You don't need to. And so my understanding is that, you know, the authorities are investigating and that some people have already been arrested for their involvement in this, yada, yada, yada. And, oh, this is an interesting comment from Gene, saying this is horrific beyond words. Knowing shit like this happens makes me less shocked by October 7th. I understand the sentiment. The kind of motivation behind these two acts is like pretty different, though, to be honest.
It is very similar in some ways as well.
It is, yes. So it's just so. What more needs to be said? Honestly, this is horrific. This is barbaric. And as a side note, I mean, every time we talk about these blasphemy lynchings that are happening, like I make this point, but I think it is now more obvious than ever, is because I used to get like really, really, really pissed when people are like, oh, well, this isn't actually Islamic because this is not deemed as okay by Islamic scriptures, or all the excuses that people give to say that this isn't Islamic, partially because in Sharia law this is not the proper way to deal with a blasphemer, for example. But I don't know how people can say that with a straight face when there's literally mosque loudspeakers announcing and inciting people to a mob. Whether or not this is Islamic in a traditional scriptural legalistic sense, whatever. But clearly this is endorsed by a large amount of the community or community leaders if we're getting announcements and incitements from the literal houses of worship itself. I don't know how deluded you expect the rest of us to be. Well, so this made me want to look into the psychology of lynching in general, which I do want to talk about a little bit. But before I go off on a huge ramp and data dump, Armin, I want to just get your reaction before I take it away. If you have anything to share.
No. By the way, I know a lot of people on our channel have been desensitized from crap like this happening in Pakistan. I just want people to understand that even though this seems repetitive, it's actually escalating. It is repetitive, but it's also getting worse. It's not the same as before.
Empirically,
so it might look like the same as before because we have lynching in Pakistan, but it is. You have to understand that it is escalating. It's not oh, this is normal for Pakistan. No, this is. It's normal to lynch people for blasphemy in Pakistan, but the level is not normal. The level is escalating. This is not even normal for Pakistan. And we used to get news like this that even the police is afraid of these mob, but now we're getting them more often. That the police people. It used to be a very rare thing for people to attack the cops, but now it's oh yeah, the police can't do anything. The police are oh, you want to come kill this person? Well, we want to live, so have at it. And even if the police is armed, but the mob is just so many, and if the police wants to defend itself, then they will surely be hunted down because they defended the blasphemer. Imagine that. Even if you succeed that day, you basically ended your life. If you want to defend, you saw, we had a politician that came out and said something about protecting somebody that was accused of blasphemy, and his own bodyguard killed him. So the police, if they coming for a blasphemer, and they were if they want to stop the mob, they will be known, they will be marked as people who protected the blasphemer. So that's why if the mob is coming at the police station, they're the police is well, I'm not getting paid enough to risk my life to protect the blasphemer. So it's just okay, mob, do what you will. So we're getting to the point where it's becoming the rule of law means nothing when it comes to blasphemy in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also, by the way, somebody was asking in the live chat, isn't it Islamically, aren't you supposed to, if somebody's accused of blasphemy, aren't you supposed to not do vigilante justice and have a course and a qazi and a shura or whatever, a judge, Islamic judge, and coming out and checking the blasphemy case? Aren't these Muslims being not Islamic by taking the law into their own hand? Aren't they doesn't Islam teaches you that if you want to kill a blasphemer, there needs to be a procedure, that there needs to be a process. There needs the accused needs to be able to defend itself. Well, if I would imagine that if somebody wants to argue Islamically for the mob's side, what they could argue, again, I'm not endorsing this, I'm just showing you that Islam leaves your hands open to justify mob justice, is that Pakistan is actually not enforcing Islamic law. Because no blasphemers have been executed by the government, right? So as a radical meaning true Muslim, Pakistani, I might be like, yeah, I would let the Islamic government do the thing that it's supposed to do. But where is the Islamic government? Sharia is not actually being enforced. Not a single person that has been accused of blasphemy has been executed by the government. So Islamic law is not being enforced, and because we don't, that's why it makes sense for us. So this is like part of Darul Harb right now. Like I could. This is my duty is to enforce Sharia, given that there is no state that is enforcing Sharia. Because enforcing Sharia means you're supposed to execute blasphemers. So that might be the argument that these people might have to take the law into their hand. So again, and you could argue, like some scholars might be like, okay, that makes sense, that's justified. Some scholars might be like, no, that's not justified. The point is that it leaves the door open for that interpretation. Like Islam, does give you that excuse to be able to say that these acts are Islamic. Yeah.
No, Armin, what you just said is like very, very prescient, because what I was researching before this news segment was I went back and I was rewatching some videos I've seen in the past that are doing case studies of lynchings that occurred in the Jim Crow era of the United States, primarily against Black men, right? In the South. And what it revealed to me was that one of the things that was what people need to understand is that the people that commit these lynchings are normal people. So we think of this as a monstrous act, right? And it is. But we need to understand that from a societal level, these are normal people. Like, this is your barber, this is your fruit seller. But there are conditions and pre-existing factors within the society that allow the normal people to do these monstrous acts in a mob setting and then still go back to their ordinary lives as normal people. Because no one thinks of themselves as the monster. And one of these preconditions is that, and when doing a comparison of lynchings in the American South to this is not a one-to-one comparison, because there's like a very highly visible racial component to what informed the actions in the American South that aren't really fully able to be transposed onto Pakistan, right? But one of the preconditions is a sense that they are actually carrying out justice, because the law of the land will not carry out the justice as they deem appropriate. So, for example, if a Black man is going to be lynched in the American South after the Civil War for a perceived, sexual impropriety towards a white woman, the mob feels it necessary to kill that man because in the court of law, he would only get 2 years in prison. And that's seen as completely unjust. That's seen as not right. That's seen as not an appropriate punishment. So when the entire Pakistani community knows that, okay, although we have this as a death sentence on the books of the law of the land, we know that our actual justice system is not going to deliver justice. Therefore, the law rendering it a death penalty legitimizes that concept, legitimizes that this is worthy of death, but everyone knows that it's not actually going to be carried out. Therefore, they are not going to be receiving the sense of justice that they feel is required and necessary. So they have to take it upon themselves to enact the justice that they feel is necessary. Like, this is a very important prerequisite. One other thing that I think is very important to understand is that you can track, especially in the American South back in the day, the frequency and rate of lynchings according to socioeconomic hardship. So basically, the more poor and impoverished and the more that people have to compete for resources in an environment is a prerequisite for higher rates of blasphemy lynchings. It doesn't take a very difficult examination of Pakistan to understand, the level of material impoverishment that many people are living with, right?
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, I have not examined, the rate of different blasphemy lynchings in different provinces and how that tracks with GDP. That'd be a very interesting project. I haven't done that, but as a general concept, right? The other thing is that what people don't understand, and this is going to sound very, very dark, but this is an element of human psychology, is that these kind of actions are actually communal bonding events. This is a way for a community to bond together.
Holy crap. You're right.
It is. And because it's a way for a community to expunge the impurity from itself. It's also a way for an impoverished, frustrated community to release its rage and anger upon the difficulty of their life, frankly, and the difficulty of their circumstances. And so it's also bonding in the sense that it is very affirming from a individual psychological level, because when you're doing this, you're saying, I have honor and I identify what is good and what is bad. And my in-group is good. And I am enacting my supremacy over what is bad by destroying it. In the antebellum South, that was clearly just open, indiscriminate, tyrannical, terroristic white supremacy. And the point of the white supremacy at that time was literally to terrorize the newly freed Black population into submission. It had a utility, right? This also has a utility. This is a utility of Islamist supremacy, of Muslim supremacy, because this is often enacted upon religious minorities. It's a supremacy against the blasphemer. It's also a way for people to feel like they are righting a wrong. And especially when you're informed and socialized with various notions of honor and shame, and the shame and disgust towards a perceived desecration or blasphemy, like it feels very validating to cleanse that. And when in a mob setting, people are empowered to do things that they would never do as individuals. It gives people a sense of being anonymized. It gives people a sense of being part of something greater than themselves, which is one of the most powerful feelings and psychological needs we have as humans. It gives people a sense of being part of the in-group, which has very, 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 very important psychologically protective factors. Because when I was studying for my psychology degree, I took this class on advanced research methods of moral development. And we looked essentially at how various factors of our human psychology, starting before we can even speak in infancy, can lead us down the path of in-group bias. One form of in-group bias, for example, is racism. And what people don't like to talk about is that this form of in-group bias, sometimes personified as racism, actually has positive benefits for the individual. That doesn't mean that it's right. That doesn't mean that it's okay. But what I'm saying is that there are observable phenomena.
Utility.
Yeah, there's a psychological utility to it, and it can be observed and measured, right? That doesn't make it okay, but people need to understand that these don't exist for no reason. these
Right.
biases
By the
exist
way,
because they have a
we
utility.
have to be careful because YouTube might not be able to tell the difference between explaining something and excusing something. So I just want to cut you for half a second here and explain to people that Susanna is explaining what's happening. And explanations sometimes for people who are not paying attention might come off as a justification, and that's not what's happening here. Okay, just for people who are not following. But go on, yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I wanted to have that little diversion of topic so that people understand like some of the factors that play into acts like this. Yeah, disclaimer. um and it and I think it's also important because we need to understand the factors that can give rise to acts like this, because this is very foreign for many people. But at the same time, I want people to understand that under the right circumstances, this could happen in your community too. Like, believe it or not. Maybe not because of a form of lynching or an accusation of blasphemy. You know what I mean? But if your society was in the right kind of preconditions, stuff like this can happen. And it's very, very sick. It is very, very sick. But then the people who enact this torture of a man in the middle of a public road will go back to their normal life. And they'll go back to being the banker or the shop owner.
Yeah.
They
Like
don't
nothing
live
happened.
their life as a monster.
Yeah.
So I hope people are okay with my little psychology diversion. I'm just too much of a
No, that was good. That was good.
I'm just too much of a psych nerd.
We have some people commenting on this in the live chat. So you start some of them. Do you want to?
Yeah, let's go through this. Muhammad. Oh, Shami. Hi, Shami is saying, Pakistan, you never fail to disappoint, nor will you ever grow when extremist hate preachers such as the TLP have become mainstream, capital of blasphemy, murders, and cousin shagging. I'm so proud. Yeah, well, Shami, I'm glad that you are not in Pakistan because you don't have to deal with this. And the mainstreaming of the TLP and their Islamist project like is a huge portion of this, although they are hardly the only people involved in an Islamist project of Pakistan. Let's be clear. Talk sense, no BC please is saying, hey guys, did you see the public flogging of a Muslim woman in West Bengal and India by crazy Muslim goons? I haven't heard of this, but I'm actually interested in covering this. So in the description of this video, we have a link to our Discord, and you can give us news suggestions on Discord if you join our Discord and then go to the channel called News Suggestions or News Recommendations. And please post a link to an article covering this there, because I would actually be interested in covering a story like this. So if you can provide me a source, we might cover it next week. And young atheist who is in Pakistan is saying, I went to SWAT many times for tour, and now I'm scared to even leave my city because people in Pakistan can blame you for blasphemy for anything. And this is the nature of the problem, is that it is openly known that these blasphemy allegations are often just utilized to settle personal scores. And you'll have hundreds of people after you before you can even say jump because of, I don't know, maybe you had a beef with someone over paying back some money or something.
Now, the problem is that sometimes it's not even, sometimes you're right. Sometimes it's settling scores. But sometimes if somebody accuses you of blasphemy, even by mistake or just randomly, then the other people denying it could be dangerous, could be seen as protecting a blasphemer. So it's just like a spark. Somebody like, oh, did this person do blasphemy? Well, which side? Now I'm the second person. I'm like, well, I'm not going to say no, because if the rest of the crowd all of a sudden decides that yes, it did, I'm going to be on the record for defending a blasphemer. So If I want to be safe, I would be like, oh yeah, he did. Let's get him. So I'm the next person like, I don't want to be defending a blasphemer. Okay, yeah, he did. Let's get him. So just the smallest amount of accusation could just go viral, and everybody would like take the safe side of assuming that this guy did do blasphemy, even if he did it. So that's how it's just all of a sudden goes. That's why it's so dangerous, because you might be even somebody like, well, I don't owe anybody any money. I don't have any enemies, so I'm safe, right? Nobody is going to just randomly accuse me of blasphemy. But apparently, no, because this guy was traveling. This guy was in a place that people didn't even know him. He didn't have any enemies there. He was just randomly accused of blasphemy, and now he's dead in the most brutal, disgusting way possible.
Yeah. So, Gasian American was asking about the socioeconomic factors. I think I already touched on that. Depressed socioeconomic situation is highly correlated with these kinds of things. Based on historic studies of these kinds of incidents. For example, in the American South, you can literally track like the power of the cotton industry to the rise and fall of lynchings. Mukti Pratit is saying, can anything fix Pakistan? Armin, I think you start this.
Yeah, well, I mean, so there's three factors here that is making Pakistan the way it is right now. Number one is Islam. Number two is poverty. Number three is inbreeding, right? These are the main factors why Pakistan is being like this, and they're both very effective. And they both work. All three of them are very effective, and all three of them work together. Like sometimes Islam is very helpful for events like this, but sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you need Islam and poverty. Sometimes Islam is enough, and poverty is often not enough. You need poverty and Islam, but Islam and poverty together by themselves are really good for increasing these types of events. But Pakistan, just to make sure that it's not going, they just added a third element, which is we're not just like, this is not just like the inbreeding part is a main impact. I think a lot of people just think like when we're mentioning inbreeding in Pakistan, we're just trying to like insult or be like edgy. This is actually this has actually been studied. Like this is a huge problem in Pakistan. This is not like us trying to be edgy or being insulting or anything like that. This is actually scientific. Go look at studies and reports. This is a major reason for why Pakistan is going down the way it is. So can we fix Pakistan? Well, the poverty part doesn't seem to be can you remove Islam from Pakistan? Here's the thing: Pakistan doesn't have much going for it when it comes to cultures and ideologies other than Pakistan. Because usually in a society, when it's becoming de-Islamized, like for example in Iran, it's because there's some alternatives, like there's something to replace that with. But Pakistan doesn't have much of an alternative, so it's really hard to de-Islamize Pakistan. When it comes to poverty, that is insanely difficult. And also these radical events makes investment in Pakistan much much more risky. This is basically the best way to advertise to all investors around the world to your money is not welcome here. So when I say Islam and poverty, it's not, the poverty is not separate from the Islam. The Islam actually brings the poverty, and the poverty brings the Islam. So it's like a vicious cycle. And the inbreeding is also not separate from the other ones. The inbreeding is also because of Islam. It's all related. Actually, you know what? The problem is Islam, because the poverty and inbreeding also comes from Islam. Actually, never mind. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't want to say nothing that we can think of can fix Pakistan, but I have to say I don't think anything can fix Pakistan. I don't want to say it because it just seems like very pessimistic, and we're talking about a very populated country with a lot of people, so it's good, like there's utility in having hope so that there's something people do about it. and being so pessimistic might discourage people to do anything about it. But I'm just struggling. Like, if anybody can find, like, I don't know, I don't see any light at the end of this tunnel. I mean, if you're saying one, please share it with us, so that we're not this pessimistic about Pakistan. I would be happy to be educated about some form of hope or anything, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that I'm not seeing it. I'm happy to be corrected. But do you see anything that could be a little bit more hopeful for Pakistan? No? Okay. I the
I have a lot of
silence.
friends in Pakistan that I really like and care about.
That makes it sadder, because
Yeah.
now that we have that, yeah, okay. Muhammad is saying, makes me sad, but I completely agree with what you said, Armin. And also, by the way, I'm glad Muhammad was mentioning the TLP, because it's the
Mm-hmm.
fourth problem is that all of this is now taking political form with a huge political might behind it. So it's not just that these problems that I mentioned are all organic, but because the TLP is there, things are getting worse, because it's going from a virus that is spreading organically in society to a systematic design behind it, which makes it a lot more forceful and a lot more guided, which makes it a lot harder to deal with. So the TLP. So yeah, add the fact that we have the TLP on top of this, to make this disease and this virus into a weapon that is being purposefully used in a direction, and that makes it all even worse.
Yeah. Okay, so we have and thank you for touching on the TLP. I think that's very important. I didn't really get into it in this segment because, like, we've rehashed the TLP and their involvement and their incitement and their history many times when we've talked about these blasphemy lynchings before. If anyone's curious about learning more about that, you can go look on our channel for other blasphemy lynchings we've covered in Pakistan, because I've probably went on a rant about that before. Um, and yeah, I just didn't want to rehash it all over again. Gasian American gave a super chat. Thank you, Gasian. Saying this is touching about a famous lynching in America for people who are not familiar. Saying the lynchers of Emmett Till were exonerated by a jury and America doesn't allow jeopardy. I can tell why Greece did ostracisms and people did goat sacrifices. Yeah, I mean, this is another issue that plays into the growing prevalence of lynchings in Pakistan today, is the amount of leniency that the perpetrators are allowed. It's like kind of a form of tacit compliance and by the authorities, and it allows these acts to continue and to continue at a higher rate. When I was studying for the show, I actually found a study that was released very recently, I think by a think tank in Pakistan, actually examining the rate of blasphemy accusations since the foundation of Pakistan. And I didn't have a chance to read through it in length, but I really, really want to, so I can come to you guys with better information. And what was so interesting was that beginning in 2011, is when we begin to see a huge spike in blasphemy accusations and blasphemy killings. And then an even bigger spike beginning in 2020. And that's very interesting to think about. And I'd be very curious to see to what extent what we see post 2020 is correlated with the COVID pandemic and any socioeconomic deprivation that followed. So that's something that I really want to investigate and then come back to you guys with. And Bhuvnesh just said, love this channel. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Um,
Okay. So
Okay, we definitely cannot clap for this next story. This is genuinely very, very shocking and upsetting. But this has become a huge story in France, and actually very important in the elections, or so I've heard.
Okay.
Gage American just gave a super chat. Wait, let's cover this quickly. Saying, People's of Republic of China brainwashing. What is this in response to, Gasian? I don't understand.
All right. Well, thank you for the super chat. Okay, next news.
Oh, God, yes. Okay. This is really important. Okay, next news. 12-year-old French girl RAPE'd for being Jewish. In a horrifying incident that has shocked France, 2 adolescent boys were arrested for allegedly RAPing and assaulting a 12-year-old Jewish girl in Cordevieux. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce French things. The attack, described by Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, was an RAPE committed, quote, because she is Jewish, and has ignited national outrage and sparked protests against rising anti-Semitism. The suspects, aged 12 and 13, face serious charges, including aggravated gang RAPE of a minor and violence motivated by religion. This incident has prompted intense political discourse, with leaders across the spectrum condemning the attack. Interior Minister Gerard Darmanin highlighted the broader societal implications, stating, "It's a problem of the parents and of authority. It's a problem of society as a whole." This case has reignited discussions about anti-Semitism in France, particularly in the wake of increased tensions following the Israel-Hamas conflict, and has led to calls for unity against all forms of racism and discrimination. So this is a horrific case that is absolutely crazy. And the kind of details behind what happened is not very easily accessible in English media. So I tried to do a little bit of digging in French media using Google Translate to the best of my ability. So, okay, let me talk about what I know and then the kind of some asterisks that might come with it. So my understanding is that in France in general, since October 7th, there has been like a 300% spike in cases of anti-Semitism. And we've seen this reflected across the world, a huge global spike in anti-Semitism where Jews are and where they don't even live. And France is no exception. France apparently has the largest presence of Jews outside of Israel after the United States. And what happened to this girl? So under French law, the names and identities of minors who are victims and perpetrators of crime are protected, right? But we have some more details about this case because Jewish leaders have come forward, and also the parents of this survivor have come forward to talk about it. So based on what the parents have said to the press, was this girl was beginning to experience more and more anti-Semitic harassment in school following October 7th. So this would lead people to doing zig heils around her. There were people doing things with swastikas around her, people talking about the Holocaust around her, etc. So my understanding is, and maybe it could be wrong because, again, information in English is kind of limited, is that this girl was hiding her religious identity. She was hiding her Jewish identity. Now, there are some reports that give a few following details. So there were some reports that seem to mention that maybe she was kind of romantically involved with one of the boys. It's not entirely clear. But at some point, there are even reports saying that she was pretending to be Muslim. I don't know how true this is. But based on what I seem to understand is that at some point, her Jewish identity was revealed. And these boys were filled with anger and disgust towards her, essentially dragged her into this abandoned building and assaulted her. One of them allegedly filming it. And there were 3 boys that I understand were involved with this. 2 of them are ones that are actually committing the assault, and it's not entirely clear how the 3rd one was involved. And during this assault, I mean, I can't say what was reported because of YouTube community guidelines, right? But a lot of slurs about her Jewish identity. There were some reports saying that Palestine was mentioned during her assault, but it was very, very clearly because her Jewish identity was revealed, and these boys felt anger and disgust towards it. And the identities of these boys is not known, again, because of the confidentiality policies, right? I've seen a lot of rumors online about what their potential backgrounds are. I have no idea if there's any truth to it. There's some saying that 2 of them converted to Islam. There's one saying that like one of them was North African. I really have no way to be able to determine that if they were or were not Muslim or anything like that. Those are rumors, but I have no idea if there's any truth to it. And
so the part that you know is because of her Jewish, the part that we know is that her Jewish identity being revealed was the reason why this happened. But what the identity of the boys were, we're not sure.
Yeah. And so this is like an insanely shocking case. You know, Emmanuel Macron has come forward condemning it, saying that this is anti-Semitism, naming this as an anti-Semitic attack. What is crazy is that this is not the first RAPE because a woman is Jewish that has happened in France in the past year. We covered another one that happened not too long ago where a woman was kidnapped, repeatedly assaulted because she's Jewish, and it was said by the attacker that this is basically revenge for Palestine. And when the parents of this girl came forward and talked about the effect on their daughter, which is obviously atrocious, and then what the kind of medical procedures that have to happen after this assault, which is too much for a child's mind to like understand, is that they were talking about how they believe that this attack was a mimicry of October 7th.
What? Okay, I mean, let's be honest. These boys are probably Muslim, and the Nastasia is saying they are. There are 2 of them are reverts. So I don't know. Has it been confirmed?
I have read that in some French news sources, but I have no idea how reputable those sources are because, again, I'm just scrapping together Google Translate as best as I can.
Okay.
And the Interior Minister, Gerard Darmanin, who is traditionally very, very strict on the issue of Islamist separatism in France, came forward and was saying, you know, like, if we're being completely honest, there is very little that the authorities can actually do in this situation, besides that a policeman is just in the area in the right place at the right time. And what he was saying was this is a reflection of a deep, deep sickness in society. That this is a reflection of problems with the parents. This is a reflection of problems with the authorities, like in these children's life. And then it reflects that there is a dark problem in the society as a whole. Because kids this young don't act this way in a vacuum, right? There should be parental guidance and parameters around morality and behavior that would inform a child of how to act. So like that's what he means when he's saying that, if we're being honest, there's a limited amount that the authorities can do besides act after something like this happens in terms of proactive, preemptive measures. And so after this, Macron called for like an hour-long class session in all schools about racism and anti-Semitism and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people are saying that that's not enough. This is too little, too late. And this incident is becoming, my understanding anyways, is it becoming a little bit of a flash issue in the elections that are happening in France, as dominant parties are kind of battling to talk about how they are actually the ones coming to the defense of Jewish people more than the others, particularly with the rise of the National Rally, and people are trying to point out their historic anti-Semitic roots, and they're trying to say, you know, we've moved past that, now we're coming to the defense of Jewish people.
I mean, the left party, so right now Macron's coalition is the least popular, and the National Rally, which is the party to the right of Macron, and the coalition of all the leftist parties, they are the most popular. So the middle is getting annihilated in the upcoming election, like it's wiped out. So the right and the left are becoming very popular. But I don't understand how the left could be claiming that they're protecting Jewish people when they're going to be allowing more people who have these views in. How are they claiming that they're protecting Jewish people? They're opening the gates to the barbarians who want to do exactly this, who will look at this news and be like, oh, great. So how are they protecting Jews in France exactly? Can somebody explain?
I don't know, especially with, you know, their anti-Zionism, basically, which is now just the modern face. It's not even modern. Anti-Zionism has basically always mainstreamed anti-Semitism. Not to say that there aren't good faith anti-Zionists, but let's be honest. It seems like a very weak defense when they're to be like, oh yeah, but we condemn hatred against Jews in all its forms, but they are encouraging.
But we're gonna open our door. Oh, like anti-Semitic stuff, that's bad. Oh, poor Jews. But let's open the door to the people who want these people completely wiped out of the earth, like basically at the same time. So is there any actions that they want to take? Like, is there any policies that they have that actually will help with less stuff like this happening?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I have not been following French politics at all. Right. So I can't make any judgment on that, or I can't I can't add any flavor to that talk, because I know that the French politics is just in chaos right now, and it kind of interests me, but I'm like, this is a lot to catch up on, and I don't have the time. So you've actually been following this more closely than I have been, Armin, so maybe you can provide that insight, because in all honesty, I'm not going to pretend to. I don't know.
Okay, so here's a problem I have. Usually, can people who are French and follow French politics like leave in the comment, because I sometimes spend time reading your comments after the show is over. So when it comes to the National Rally Party, which people refer to as far right, even though I looked at their manifesto, there's nothing far right about them. They're just right leaning, not far right. They have the best policies when it comes to stopping immigration, Islamic immigration coming to France. Okay, but the problem is that usually the more centrist parties are better at managing the economy, and these more right-leaning parties, they come to power and they have a better plan when it comes to immigration, but they're not as good when it comes to managing the country. Like, they just have one good policy, which is like, yes, we should stop this crazy takeover of our country. And that's what gets them popular. and I don't know if this is the case for France, but usually when they eventually get the power, they're good on that, but they just screw everything else up because they don't know how to, because they're a one-trick pony. Like, they just only know that, okay, we need to close our borders to these barbarians, but they don't have any expertise or any know-how in almost anything else. And then they just ruin everything, and the people are like, okay, well, that was a failed experiment, let's not vote for them again. Is this the same thing in France? And what should we do about it? Like, what do we do about the fact that the parties that have the correct policies when it comes to immigration don't have anything else to offer? Again, so I hope like some French people could educate me on this.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question, Armin. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
We have a few comments that you starred. Natasha is saying it's perfectly accessible in French. The assholes filmed what they did. 2 are converts or reverts. So yeah, what I've read in French media is that there were 3 boys involved. 2 actually committed the physical assault, and that one of them was described as a blondie who converted. Another one was described as a Portuguese boy who converted, and then the other one was described as North African. And
so imagine how Islam, look at the virus that Islam is. Okay, these people are acting like Muslims, even though they're just new Muslims. Like, you don't even have to have the background of Islam and being in an Islamic family for your mind to be corrupt. Like, you just went on full on RAPE mode of a Jewish person, just even though you're a recent Muslim. Like,
at
you could be
13 years
see,
old.
guys. This is not a racist issue. It's not a race issue. You could be white, you could be black, you could be brown, you could be Middle Eastern, you could be North American, you could be anything. But the mind virus of Islam rots your brain. This is race independent from your race. But yeah, go on.
And I think what's important for people to understand is that, especially within the context of an honor culture, that an act like this is intended to quote Ayaan Hirsi Ali, to drive a sword of shame into the heart of the Jewish people. And especially within a patriarchal society, there's no better way to do that than to destroy the purity of your women, right? And so I think one of the ways that we can think of defeating that sort of shame is to annihilate it, to not make it work. We need to lift up the survivors of victims of RAPE as a weapon of war, right? Lift them up as strong, support them, believe them. Because again, apparently it's Me Too unless you're a Jew. And celebrate their strength and provide them with any and all resources that they need to recover from the nature of an attack that is this insidious. And yeah, don't let the sword of shame work. So there are a few super chats we got. The hater gave a €5 and saying, I am Portuguese. The Portuguese media said that one of the boys was Portuguese, converted at 12, and was daring the girl to hide their religion. Sorry, your grammar doesn't 100% make sense, but I think what you're referring to is what I've heard, that one of them was romantically involved with her and she was hiding her religion. And then when he found out, was the kind of the motivation for this attack. And Gaysian American is saying the left can openly brainwash patriotism in schools. Thank you for the super chat, Gaysian. Well, except the left hates patriotism. I don't know.
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
Depends on the country. Well, let's not get into that, maybe.
Yeah. Idris gave a comment saying the French left has proven so pathetic on this issue, but they keep claiming the anti-Semitism allegations is just a smear from the far right. The left leader said, quote, it must be hard having an R-wording son.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's your concern. That's your concern.
The concern is,
okay.
Yeah, that's the main concern. What about the son, having a daughter that just got RAPE. I mean, that must be harder.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Flower DB is saying immigration can be beneficial for society, but unchecked mass immigration is disastrous, especially when you have a welfare state.
Yes.
That's what the social democrats don't want to hear.
So yeah, guys, you shouldn't be anti-immigration. You should be anti-mass unchecked immigration. For immigration to be beneficial, it needs to be controlled, it needs to be limited, it needs to be based on specific skills that your country needs, and it needs to be based on values that people have. And if you are incapable of controlling the values, because who can, then the countries or any geography that has a higher percentage of people with bad values should be off limits, unless you have a way to completely identify who are the people who have these bad values and who are the people who are not. But again, if you reduce the numbers significantly, then you can bring proper immigrants based on the skills and values. Again, I want to really highlight values that makes your country greater. Yeah, you are not anti-immigration, we're anti-mass, unchecked, unfiltered, uncontrolled immigration, especially from Islamic countries. I mean, from Islamic countries, if it's quite obvious that somebody, for example, first of all, if you reduce your immigration numbers, like some people are like, oh, Armin, what about the ex-Muslims? What about the LGBT? What about the Christian family that is being attacked? Yeah, I'm sure those people, those are like so small a number that if you're not just opening the gates to your country, you're going to be able to identify those specific rare cases where it's so obvious that this person is not going to be a threat to your country, that person needs help. Okay, those cases are going to be so easily identifiable, and it's not going to change the demographic of your country. And bringing a Christian family from Pakistan that is about to get lynched, to France is not going to be a threat to your country. Okay, and it's just like the cases are so low that it's not even going to change any of the demographics. So yeah, those are. But before you even talk about that, you need to reduce the immigration to your country from these horrible places, so that you even have the resources to be able to talk about saving some people that might need the help. But anyways,
okay, so the haters following up with another super chat saying yes, dating. He was dating the girl and found out. Oh my god. And this comment from United States saying, I'm 12 and all the kids at school listen to Nick Fuentes. God, I hope this is not true. And I don't know why, but seeing this super chat made me think of this one time. Oh wait, don't pull that up yet. It made me think of this one time I was at in California, and you pull it up again.
No, there's something else I want to say about it. Yeah.
I randomly came across a group of Israelis, and they're one of the kids in the group. Sorry, this is a side note, but I just need to laugh. Okay, this is like probably like a 10-year-old kid, and he was wearing a shirt, and the shirt had Pikachu on it, except Pikachu had the little Hasidic hat and like the curls, the payas, and the shirt at the bottom said Pikachu.
That was cute. I like that.
I was like, this kid just, I don't know. I literally stopped and asked his dad if it was okay to take a photo because I loved it so much. Okay. I just needed to laugh. I'm sorry, guys.
Before you go to the super chats, can I make a comment about one? I forgot to mention something about this news. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remove the comment, because this is important? We should not forget this. Every single time we have a news, I almost forgot to mention this, but every single time there is a news item like this, you have to tell people that this is why we need Israel. Okay, this is Zionism confirmed, right? Don't forget to remind people that when you see the amount of hate, the amount of threats, that exists against Jews worldwide, that this is another confirmation for why Israel must exist. And this is why Zionism was valid. This is why it was the correct thing to do to create the country, the nation state of Israel.
Yeah. So Asian American gave another super chat saying their brainwashing centers will just market it as patriotism. Again, I'm sorry, my friend, I don't see the connecting thread between your super chats. But you know, we've come to love this about Gaijin and his, I think we should call it like an esoteric kind of character and thought process. You know, one day I hope to be on his level. Flying Robot Duck gave another super chat saying if centrist parties tackled the Islamist mass immigration threat, they wouldn't have to worry about the far right.
Well, here's the thing. Actually, Macron was. I agree.
You're right. Actually, he was going after this. Sorry, continue.
No, but yeah, maybe it actually backfired for Macron. I thought that was smart. Okay, I thought Macron was like, okay, these right-leaning parties, yeah, and I'm glad that you put far right in quotations because I don't know if it's correct to call them far right. I don't see anything far right about them, but if you're worried about these parties taking control, then the fact that they're becoming more popular is because your citizens want more limitations on Islamist mass immigration. That's why they're becoming popular. So maybe take those policies. And Macron did that, but it backfired. Do you know why it backfired, Susie? Do you know why it backfired? Why? Because it literally normalized them, right? Because in France, there were people in France were told that these are like these are fucking radical, far right, insane bigots. And now Macron comes and basically says like, okay, let's adapt their policies on immigration. And a lot of French people were like, okay, so they're not the evil boogeymen that you wanted to us to like. If you are basically have all, but so a lot of Macron's like economic policies, and I don't know, he changed the age of retirement and other things are very unpopular, and he now adopted the policies on immigrations of these so-called far right of the National Rally, the far right party. So people are like, okay, so the thing that we were supposed to be afraid of regarding these people, you have their immigration policies, and they also don't have your unpopular economic policies, and also raising the age of retirement. So, given that you are now confirming that these parties, the National Rally, is not as evil as you said it was, why don't we just switch to them? That's how it worked out. So again, it backfired. I don't know if that was it seemed like a good idea, like when Macron was, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but the results have been saying otherwise.
Well, whether or not it was personally beneficial to himself or his party, I think it was still necessary.
Yes.
Like, let's be honest.
Yes. Right. Yes. I agree with that, but it didn't work in his favor.
Policies that banned virginity testing, that banned the surgeries that you do to reconstruct the hymen, that banned bringing in multiple wives on spousal visas for numerous countries. Like, those are basic things that are completely necessary. I think banning homeschooling was one of them. Yeah. So.
Oh, but yeah, actually, Space Leo was mentioning about Sweden. One reason why in the European election, okay, for the parliament in the EU, the more Scandinavian countries did not, the far right, like the so-called far right, did not get elected. So you can see a lot of European countries, more right-leaning party got a lot more seats than they used to. But if you look at the Scandinavian countries, that is not the case. The leftist parties that good there, and a lot of leftists we're like, oh, look, the Scandinavian countries, they're more informed people. It's because the education there. It's only in these like uneducated, like France and Germany, where people vote right leaning. It's because in these countries, people are more informed and more educated. They vote left leaning. That's why those countries are doing better. The left leaning parties are doing better. But the actual reason why that happened is because for two reasons. First of all, they have less immigration. I mean, they're far away from all this immigration stuff. They have less people, less Islamic immigration, relatively, right? Two, the leftist parties there are also anti-immigration. Like they have also taken an anti-immigration position. So that's, they're lying to us. It's not because, oh, if you're more informed, you will vote left. It's because the leftist parties there are not as welcoming to a mass wave of immigrants as these other countries. So that's the reason. That's the actual reason.
No, it was interesting. A few months ago, I did a podcast with Zara Kay and Luay Ahmed, and they live in Sweden, right? And we were talking about kind of attitudes and stuff in Sweden. And I can't remember exactly because this was some time ago, but they were talking about how the left parties, like would really demonize the Swedish Democrats. And then 10 years later, we're openly talking about how the Swedish Democrats had the correct immigration policy this whole time. Like, oh my God. Okay, last super chat. Enric, thank you for the $10 super chat, saying the problem with reacting voting right is a move towards another tribalist ideology, more extreme tribalism, moving a nation to reactive tribalism. Reason and individualism is the resolution or the solution.
Yeah, that might be correct. However, if you don't it might work the other way around. If you do not give a seat to these people at the table, then they will become more tribal, right? So you want to, as a nation, you want to work together instead of everybody being in their own tribes thinking that they're against everyone else, right? If you want to be less tribal, giving these people who feel like they're isolated and demonized a seat at the table to feel like they're part of this team project called a nation state might make them feel that they're being, that they're involved with the rest of society. So if you don't vote, if you think like if we just completely get rid of them, that might actually make this, because they have grievances and they have concern, and isolating them and demonizing them might make them become more of looking more in group rather than trying to look at the rest of the nation as the group that they belong to. And that will actually work in favor of them becoming more tribal. So there's that way of looking at it as well. Yeah. Again, I don't know. This is complicated, but I'm just saying take that perspective as well.
Okay. Oh, and then we just got another super chat. Carlos Colley sent a super chat saying the number one problem with attempting to vet immigrants is determining if they are being truthful. Do they share the values of the country? Who vets them? Muslims? I mean, this is going to vary widely depending on what country you're talking about. So there's a lot of variety. I think the question of like fraud and falsification is a genuine concern, because there's lots of people who are like, yeah, I had to give an oath to become Canadian, for example, but no oath is going to supersede like my allegiance or subservience or whatever to Allah or any other ideology. But actually, we're going to be talking next week about a new rule that Germany made as a precondition to citizenship is to validate Israel's right to exist, which is very, very interesting. Yes. And we're going to talk about it next week in more detail, but I should just say now, because Armin was talking about this. He was talking about this months ago, that this should be a prerequisite. And I was skeptical. If this would happen.
I was being called a radical by our own community. They're like, Armin, you're becoming an authoritarian dictator. I was like, what the hell? This is a value.
I was skeptical. Yeah. I didn't think it could be done, but it was done. And so, Armin, I apologize. You were right. But we're going to talk about that in more detail next week.
I appreciate that. But can I respond to the super chat as well? Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the thing. You either can or you can't determine If you can't, then you shouldn't let them in. So here's the thing: if you want to let migrants in, right? When it comes to Islamic countries, because there's a problem with that, so let's look at this at different levels. There are certain countries where it's safer to allow immigrants in. To migration from countries with better values is actually does help your country economically. So you could do that. Wait, why did you removed me here? So that's a semi-safe thing to do. Like there are countries like Vietnam, Philippines, countries in from Africa, countries that are not Islamic, from East Asia. There's many countries that you could bring immigrants in, that have the proper skills, and that's a win. That could, if it's done right, it could be a win-win. When it comes to Islamic countries, right? There's two levels. First of all, if you want to bring migration from Islamic countries that fill in, some labor shortages or anything like that, yeah, you're right. You cannot vet them. All right. So what do you do? How do you bring them in? You don't. You don't, given that you cannot vet them, except some very specific cases. And I'm talking about cases that is very obvious that this is an ex-Muslim, like, for example, somebody that is it's on the news that this is an ex-Muslim that it was supposed to be executed or something, or somebody that is on the run because of being LGBT, or a Christian family that is being abused by their society. It's obvious, right? So other than when it comes to Islamic countries, because there's no way to vet properly, I would suggest to cut off immigration completely from Islamic countries, except rare cases of people who have been on the run because of their activism, or because of their LGBT, or because of leaving Islam, or because of being Christian, or any form of other minority that is being attacked by an Islamic communities. Those are very rare cases. But other than that, from Islamic countries, completely cut off immigration from Islamic countries. That's what I think. There's enough other countries. If you're having a low population issue, or if you're having lack of skilled labor in certain areas, there's plenty of other countries that are willing to fill in that gap. No problem. People are lining up. People, that are happy to come and not only take advantage of what your country has to offer, but also to provide services for your country and make it a win-win for both of you, and also to respect the rule of law, and also, most importantly, be grateful for the opportunity, not trying to destroy the country, but appreciate the country. There we go.
Yeah. Gary sent a super chat. Thank you, Gary, saying the cognitive dissonance of the left has reached legendary status. Left-wing ideology has to accept that it has failed and it is dangerous. The left at large has seemingly abandoned and given up on the cause of liberalism. Personally, I do not give a shit if you call yourself left or you call yourself right. I care about if you are interested in the project goals and aspirations of liberalism. So let me be clear. Actually, one second. I have a book that I can recommend to people that talks about this very issue.
Yeah, so basically here, what I have advocated for is, when we're talking about the left that we have a problem with is the Marxist left and the woke left, okay? Not the liberal left. So when it comes to right or left, progressive or conservative, we don't really care much if you're a conservative or a progressive. It doesn't really matter. We don't care if you're right or left. We care if you're liberal or illiberal, because the part of the left that is a problem is the illiberal part of the left. The illiberal part of the left is the woke left and the Marxist left. That is where the threat is coming. The right-leaning, there are liberal right-leaning people, and there are liberal left-leaning people, and they are both on our side. Okay, there are illiberal right-leaning people that are against us. There are illiberal left-leaning people that are against us. And also, I've changed my mind in the past couple of years regarding conservative or progressive, because it doesn't even make sense to be progressive or conservative. Certain things need to be conserved because they just work. Certain things need to change, and we need to progress out of them because they don't work. So I don't think anybody should be either progressive or conservative. I think being a conservative or progressive should be case by case, and it should be assessed separately. So the only thing that makes sense is to look at whether or not somebody is being liberal or illiberal. But go on, Susie, you have a book?
So this is a book I read when I was on vacation. Some light vacation reading about the invasion of Iraq and the Bosnian genocide. But so this is called What's Left: How the Left Lost Its Way by Nick Cohen. I highly, highly, highly suggest it. It was written in 2007, and so it highly focuses on, the Second Iraq War. But I cannot recommend this book enough, because if you read this nowadays, you're going to really feel like this is prophetic. Nick Cohen is currently a writer and a columnist in The Guardian or The Observer, I think. And so I've actually been a fan of him for a long time. And this book was just gifted to me, actually by an Atheist Republic member that I met at a protest for a liberated Iran, for the downfall of the Islamic Republic. Fun fact. Basically, one of the theses of this book is that Marxism, the 20th century killed Marxism, and that this left the Marxists, who had dedicated their life towards this project, in a sense of nihilism, and they had nothing better to do and no better tactic than just to constantly point out the hypocrisies of the West and of modernity at large, because they have they don't have a positive project to fight for. So this just shifted them towards a general nihilism, and they became increasingly irrelevant, except only in the sense that they could make themselves relevant off the back of Muslim grievance. And this became particularly prescient during the 2000s. And it was very, very interesting. So this nihilism leads them to basically abandon all morality or any of their supposed values against tyranny, and instead just partner with anything that is against the force that killed it, being liberalism, free market economics, and modernity. And so they will partner with anything that is against what killed it. My own thoughts, which is very interesting, is to contrast that with the death of the caliphate, which then burst Islamism, also grappling with the sense of meaninglessness of nihilism. And they're very natural allies, because they're allying against the forces that killed these supposedly diametrically opposed ideologies. What killed them is liberalism and modernity. So although it's literally the far left and the far right, like what defeated them was a superior ideology. And so they basically have nothing better to do to make themselves relevant than to partner against, this greater force in the world that birthed the idea of human rights. So
I just want to clarify here, when on this channel, when we say far right, we're not talking about what other people call far right. We're not talking about these parties in Europe that are actually having sane immigration policies. Okay, we're talking about actual racist, xenophobic people. Like if you are like, okay, I need to protect my country and control immigration, other people will call you far right. We will call you sane. When we're saying far right, we're talking about actual fascists. Okay, we're actually talking about actual racist people, actual xenophobic people. Okay, we're not talking about controlling our borders, which any sane country would do. That's what we mean.
Theocratic, misogynistic, homophobic fascists.
Right.
Yeah, because people seem to have lost the plot. Anyways, we went on quite the diversion. I think we should go to the next story, Armin.
But
it was a good diversion.
I just want to say Kenny was appreciating you recommending that book, and Hooch was saying that because guys, we have a newsletter, so you subscribe to our newsletter. Hooch was saying, send those book titles that you trust in a newsletter, please. So thank you for being subscribed to our newsletter, and maybe that should be one of our newsletters. That would be a good idea.
Oh, maybe.
So yeah.
We just got one more super chat. Actually, yeah, one more. John Bundock, thank you for the $5, is saying, regarding Armin's immigration idea, what does one do about Syrians or Uyghurs, for example, who can make real asylum claims, sectarianism as a source of persecution?
Well, as your duty to, as the countries who have signed on to accepting asylum seekers, they can choose which countries they pick their asylum seekers from, and you don't have any duty to take them from Syrians. Like you could pick them, like you could fill those numbers from people from other countries. And again, that might seem heartless, but again, you have to take care of your country before you could take other people. Like you could basically say, yeah, we're not taking asylum seekers from Syria because that's a threat to our countries. Yeah, some of these people need help, but again, every nation has to take care of itself if it wants to even be helpful to the rest of the planet. You need to take care of your nation state first. So yeah, every country has a duty to take some asylum seekers, but you could easily fill those with taking them from countries that are not Islamic.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next story? Do you have it ready?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay. This
not clapping.
Oh. Yeah, not okay. Really.
Oh yeah, this one. Okay. All right. Well, next news.
Next news, terror in Dagestan. Armed Islamists target churches and a synagogue. In a shocking series of coordinated attacks on June 24th, the Islamic militants targeted Orthodox Christian churches, a synagogue, and a traffic police post in Dagestan, a predominantly Muslim republic in southern Russia. The assaults, which occurred in the cities of Derbent and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this. Makhakala, I don't know, resulted in 20 deaths, including 15 police officers, and left 46 people injured. The attackers used firearms and Molotov cocktails, setting fire to religious buildings and vehicles. In one particularly brutal incident, Reverend Nikolai Kotennikov, a 66-year-old Orthodox priest, had his throat slit before his church was set on fire. The attacks coincided with the Orthodox celebration of Pentecost, adding to their emotional impact. So another Islamist terrorist attack on a religious holiday. Dagestan's governor, Sergei Melikov, attributed the violence to foreign-directed sleeper cells, stating that the assailants aimed at sowing panic and fear. Russian authorities reportedly killed at least 5 gunmen in the response, with some reports suggesting the attackers included family members of a local pro-Kremlin party official. This violent outbreak, the deadliest in Russia since the Crocus City Hall attack in March that killed 145 people, has reignited concerns about religious extremism in the region. The incident has prompted a 3-day mourning period and highlighted the ongoing challenges of maintaining ethnic and religious harmony in Russia's diverse and volatile North Caucasus region, especially in light of recent previous incidents such as the anti-Semitic airport rampage in that same city that I cannot pronounce, Makhalaka, in October of 2023. So people will remember shortly after the beginning of Israel's response in Palestine, there was that incident that we covered where there was a plane that landed coming from Israel into this, like, I think it's the capital of Dagestan. And Armin, do you remember that incident that happened where there was like hundreds, maybe thousands of people that swarmed that airplane, like literally going on a pogrom, like hunt for Jews that they thought was on this airplane? No one was Israeli and no one got harmed, but they almost lynched like a bunch of random Uzbek nationals just on the assumption that they were Jews coming from Israel. It was like literally thousands of people stormed an entire airport on a hunt for Jews. So this happened in that same city. And this is, we covered another incident that happened very recently with the ISIS, the ISIS militants that took hostage some Russian prison guards in their prison and then were killed. And then there was the very, very violent, horrific terrorist attack that happened in the Crocus City Hall in March. That was allegedly committed by several Tajik nationals. And so Russia has a big Islamist terrorism problem. Dagestan is a region that has historically been plagued by Islamist violence for decades. There was kind of what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of a lull in the past couple of years. And some people attribute that lull in the violence in the Dagestan region to the fact that reportedly thousands of extremists left Dagestan to go join ISIS. So it's, oh yeah, there was a little bit of security because they all left the region to go fight for ISIS. I'm not going to lie. Like, Russian Muslims scare me the most. They are so freaking extreme. Like, it was a Chechen refugee that was the one that beheaded Samuel Paty in France. I don't know what's going on there, but they take things seriously on a different level that, like, I have hardly seen anywhere else.
Do you know what Putin and Russian officials have been doing in all these examples that you mentioned? Like, we have seen more and more Islamic attacks in Russia, right? Recently, ever since October 7th. And so I also want to mention that, like, what they do to these people after doesn't show strength. The fact that they let these things happen, that shows how weak they are. But another, like, I want to add to what I mentioned last week, another sign of how weak and pathetic they are is that they not only they deny that they have an Islamic, Russian officials deny that they have a growing Islamic problem. They keep saying these are from Ukraine. Do you know that? Every single one of them, they're like, oh yeah, this was Ukraine.
Yeah.
You have ISIS
the governor
attacking
came
you
forward
and
and tried to make this a Ukrainian thing. There's no evidence.
It's insane. I mean, I wanted to make sure. Here's the thing. I didn't know the last two times they blamed it on Ukraine. They're blaming ISIS on Ukraine. And I was like, did they do this again? Like, I wanted to go check if they did. Like, I was like, they probably did it again. And like, yeah, like I was guessing, like, I just went and checked. They did it again. They're again saying this is Ukraine. Should I read this?
Sure, go ahead. I mean, it's as predictable as the sun rising and setting.
Yeah, Russian officials blame Ukraine and the United States for the recent terrorist attack in Dagestan, despite the Islamic State in Khorasan province claiming responsibility. So I don't know how to read this Russian name. MP, like, I don't know how to read these names. Some MP there suggested on television that the attacks may have been orchestrated by intelligence services of Ukraine and NATO without offering any evidence. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, denied that armed Islamist radicalism was on the rise in Dagestan, insisting the attacks were not supported by society. However, experts interviewed by Voice of America's Russian service said the Kremlin focus on the war in Ukraine means it has taken its eyes off the terrorist threat in Dagestan. The reluctance of Russian authorities to openly address the Islamist threat in Dagestan is seen as a strategic move linked to the ongoing conflict with Ukraine by portraying Ukraine and the collective West as the main adversaries. The authorities aim to divert public attention from the challenges posed by Islamic extremism. Well, fantastic. Unbelievable.
I was reading some analysis saying that this shows how weak the internal, because this is a region that is reportedly heavily monitored, given how historic the violence is. And accordingly, it used to be like there used to be like nearly daily attacks in Dagestan. And then, like I said, it kind of went into a lull. But the fact that the majority of the people that were killed in this attack were security services goes to show how taken unprepared they were. And there are people saying, like, if they can't even defend and protect their own security services to this extent, how are they going to be able to protect the general public? And in that sense, it makes a lot of sense for them to blame this all on Ukraine and the West and NATO, because then it helps them like wash away their own responsibility in a sense. It helps kind of cover up how weak they actually are against these threats. We just got a super chat from John. Do we want to move to that, or do you have other things you want to touch on?
Yeah, I'm actually fact checking what he's saying to be able to respond to that. But yeah, is there any other things that you want to read in the chat before I fact check what he's saying? Because I don't know.
No.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to super chat. Yeah.
John is saying, so Le Pen, talking about Marie Le Pen in France, praised Assad. Maloney repeated IRGC lie during war on ISIL that Hezbollah militia or guardians of Christians. I don't know what one can do with that. So
okay, so let me check. Okay, so here's the thing. First of all, I really like many of the positions of Giorgia Meloni. Obviously, she's going to have positions. Anybody, any politician is going to have positions that I don't like. Right. The main things I like about Giorgia Meloni is that he's somebody that is considered to be more right leaning and called far right by many people around the world. Yet she is taking a hard position against Russia and in favor of NATO and working, and she's not anti-EU. And I want us to support politicians who are aggressively taking a position against Islamic immigration, but they're not anti this, global institutions like the United Nations and NATO, and are taking a hard stance against countries like Russia and China. Because the problem with some of these more right-leaning parties are that they are too close with Russia and China. So Marine Le Pen, for example, is more of a person that I have more criticism of because she's more closer to, countries that have more illiberal stances, right? But I really like to celebrate Meloni because she's one of the people who are considered to be far right by so many people, but at the same time, she is in favor of working with these global institutions. So I like her. So I checked whether
isn't she pretty
Meloni...
Eurosceptic though?
No, not so. Depends on what you mean by Eurosceptic. If Eurosceptic means that they want to destroy, like get out of EU, no, she's not that at all. Okay. If Eurosceptic means it's a spectrum, it's not black and white. Okay. If Eurosceptic means that you want some limitation of how much influence the United Nations, the European Union has in the policies of your country, well, there's different degrees to it. And actually, it makes sense. Like you could still be in favor of working with the EU, but also making sure that your country as a nation state has the independence of having its own policies without it being ordered from another institution to your citizens. So that depends on what you mean by Eurosceptic. But what John is saying regarding her, so apparently, yes, Giorgia Meloni previously praised Hezbollah and other allies of Bashar Assad for being defenders of Syrian Christians, and I condemn that. That's an insane position to take, and I do not like that position. But again, if you are saying that we should be against completely these parties, I could recognize the correct position sometimes these parties take. So, for example, like for even individuals, right? like Tommy Robinson, for example. He says a lot of things that I agree with, but I'm not going to deny that the guy is an anti-vaxxer, which is insane. He also believes in some really crazy conspiracy theories. For example, he believes 9/11 was an inside job. I can at the same time recognize that his position against the rise of Islamism in the UK and insane immigration policies, those positions are good, while at the same time realizing that, okay, your claim about 9/11 being his inside job is insane. It's not black and white. You can at the same time support some people's positions and be against them. For Giorgia Meloni, that position of her is very disappointing. I didn't know that she said that. I looked it up. Yeah, apparently she did say that, and it's very disappointing. And also, I checked your claim about Marine Le Pen, and yeah, that claim is also true about Marine Le Pen, and that is very disappointing, and I'm against. But again, this is not black and white. We could be for someone's position on something and against them on something else. But thank you for informing me about this.
What I find very interesting is I find that political leaders across the spectrum, across all parties, often fall into the trap of praising tyrannical, authoritarian, fascist leaders as a way to justify non-interventionism. So I'm not familiar with either of these specific instances or claims, but I'm not going to make an assumption, but it'd be very interesting to see to what extent was it a justification for non-interventionism, for isolationism. Because I'm going to take the stance that deposing fascist tyrants is a good thing.
Well, it depends.
And that Europe took it upon itself as a project of the 20th century to do that. But then suddenly, we've decided to wash ourselves of that responsibility moving forward in the rest of the world.
Yeah, but you have to. I mean, that was the same philosophy with Saddam. Looked at how that worked out. So maybe not always. Maybe sometimes. Yeah.
Talked about heavily in this book.
Yeah. Okay. So
the older I get, I think that people who call themselves pacifists and non-interventionists are actually just deluded appeasers of fascism.
Right. So I think there's also a spectrum. It doesn't make sense for you to be pro-intervention or anti-intervention. It's a case-by-case basis. It's a spectrum. Anybody who's like completely anti-interventionist, are they saying that like it was a bad idea for United States to get into the World War II against Hitler and helping Europe, helping the world get rid of Hitler? Like, was that a bad idea? Like, people who are anti-interventionists, they mention Iraq and Afghanistan, right? What about World War II? What about NATO's involvement in Serbia, stopping a genocide? What about that? Like, are these not examples that show you that sometimes interventions actually work and help the planet?
But in both of those instances, there's a strong history of self-identified pacifists opposing intervention in both of those cases and actually appealing to the good records of the genociders as a reason to not intervene. These are the pacifists.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
what about defeating ISIS? Like Unicorn was mentioned. Yeah, Unicorn was like, or what about what was happening to the Yazidis? Yeah. So what about defeating ISIS? Was that a bad idea? That was a good idea.
Or what happened to the Kurds?
Or Rwanda, for example. We did, like, the world sit back and watch what happened in Rwanda. So was that a good idea to be a pacifist back then? Anyways. So
we ignored what happened to the Kurds.
Yeah,
it's a moral stain against the world.
It's more complicated than being able to say it's a good idea or bad idea. But again, anyways, can we clap for the next news? No, right? Can we?
Oh God, no. Just Space Elliot saying, Susanna, could you take Biden's place as the Democrat nominee? Here's the thing. I heard a quote today from a pundit, and it just feels very true, that the Republican Party has no morals and the Democratic Party has no spine. Okay. So here's the thing. I would like to, I like to think that I have a spine. Maybe I don't. Maybe it's self-delusion, whatever. But it's something I like to assume. And so I think I would have a hard time fitting in that party in general.
Well, you could give
I'm politically homeless.
You could give it a spine. Yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
All right.
That's
So
right.
some only bad news today. The last news is not, guys, just bear with us. This is the last tragic news. The last news might be uplifting to a lot of you people. I don't know if
The
how you
last
guys
news,
feel
it's
about
just
us.
going to be straight up very interesting, and we're going to be nerds together.
Yes, good. So just one more horrible news. Sorry, today was this many, like 4 out of 5 today was horrible news. The
I
last
know.
one is not that
Yeah. Next week is not going to be so dark, I think.
tragic.
But
Okay,
like I
good.
said, these are actually like really important things to talk about, so we got to do it. It's not always fun.
Okay, so next news.
Next news. Woman tries to drown 3-year-old Muslim child in the United States. This is absolute insanity. In a disturbing incident in a suburban Dallas, Texas area, 42-year-old Elizabeth Wolfe was arrested and charged with attempted capital murder and injury to a child after allegedly trying to drown a 3-year-old Muslim girl in an apartment complex pool. The attack, which occurred on May 19th, was reportedly accompanied by racist remarks directed at the child's hijab wearing mother. According to the police, Wolfe made statements about the woman not being American and attempted to grab the victim's 6-year-old brother before forcibly submerging the young girl. The mother, identified only as Mrs. H, expressed her fear and distress, saying, "My daughter is traumatized. Whenever I open the apartment door, she runs away and hides, telling me she's afraid that the lady will come and submerge her head in water again." The Council of American Islamic Relations, or CARE for short, which is not an organization we are a fan of, as a side note, has called for the incident to be investigated as a hate crime, while local authorities have requested prosecutors to treat it as such. The case has sparked outrage and concern about anti-Muslim bigotry and racism in the community, with the Texas representative Salman Boljani condemning the attack and emphasizing that hate has no place in, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, ULES District 92 or anywhere else in our great state. Okay, so let me
Wait,
provide a
can
little bit more. Go
before
ahead.
you say that, there's a misunderstanding in the live chats. Somebody's saying, Armin, in what world is this uplifting? I said about the next news. I said, bear with us. That's the next news. I wasn't saying, I just want to clarify, this is not the one I was referring to as uplifting. I said we have 5 news, the 5th one. This is the 4th news today. Okay, go on.
As in the next news after this news. As in the last news. Yikes. Okay, that's an important clarification. Whoops. So here's what I know about this case. So this piece of shit was reportedly drunk and at a pool at this apartment complex. And there was this mother, and she was dressed modestly. She was wearing the hijab. I don't know if she was in like a modest bathing suit or something, but she was at this pool with her children. And this drunk piece of shit comes up and starts harassing her. There were some reports saying that she tries to remove this woman's hijab. She starts demanding to know where she's from. I don't know if it was disclosed, but the ethnic background of this family is that they're Palestinian. And so I don't know if the mother actually gave that explanation or anything, but this woman was spewing obscenities, and then she tries to attack the 6-year-old boy. The mother goes to try to protect the 6-year-old boy. When the mother is distracted trying to deal with that situation with one child, the woman goes and attacks the 3-year-old little girl and attempts to drown her by submerging her head underwater.
Why?
I mean, there is no, who knows why? What? How do you answer that question? How do you even answer that question? I
Is
don't
she
even know how to begin to answer that question. There
is
is
this mental disorder? We don't know yet, though.
She was reportedly intoxicated. That doesn't explain this in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, so we don't know. We don't know what the hell's wrong with this woman.
But sometimes I feel like we make the mistake of assuming rationality. I don't think there is a
I didn't assume
rationality.
anything. I'm saying we can't assume anything. I mean, yeah. So she might be insane. That's why I'm not assuming. When I say that she might be insane, that means I'm not assuming rationality.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's really important to highlight these issues because the level of bigotry that exists around the world towards other people and to take that out on a child is absolute insanity to me.
Okay, but here's the thing. I think I disagree with two parts of our live chat. Some people are saying this woman is hatred towards Muslims, and some people are saying this do not happen. Like, look at Chuck Norris is saying, I don't believe that anything of this sort happened. And Sassy Girl is also, I want to hear more of the story. Something doesn't seem right. And then also Chuck Norris is saying, I don't believe it for a second. Like, you guys think that people don't attack, like, if you hear about a news that a Muslim is being attacked, you think that doesn't happen? You think, like, why is that? Like, do you think that only Muslims attack people? You don't think it doesn't happen the other way around at all? Like, you guys are basically doing the same thing that many Muslims do, that they want to be the victim always, and they don't believe at all. Like, are you going to be against any story that suggests that sometimes Muslims are attacked? Anti-Muslim hate is actually a real thing. Islamophobia is a lie. There's no such thing as Islamophobia. We're extremely anti-Islamic. But there is this thing called anti-Muslim hate. I mean, this might not be it. This woman might be insane, and she might have done that to any other child. We don't know. It might be because
given the
of
nature of her
hatred towards
harassment
Muslims.
of the woman beforehand would seem to be
Right.
on the basis of the woman's presenting as visibly Muslim and being foreign. And
Right.
what was reported to her abuse beforehand, I don't think this would have happened to just any other person that didn't fit those criteria. Let's be honest. I mean, come on.
Right. Okay, so let's categorize how we think about this, or how I think about this. Okay, so we have Islam, we have Muslims, we have hate crimes, and we have mental case issues, right? Being anti-Islam, absolutely correct, perfectly fine. You should be, any sane person would be against Islam. Attacking Muslims and demonizing all Muslims, unless there's a Muslim who's attacking you, right? Wrong, and anti-Muslim hatred is a real thing, and it should be condemned and fought against. In fact, one reason why we're against Islam is because we care for Muslims. We're not anti-Muslim. We're anti-Islam because Islam harms everyone, including Muslims, right? So we're not anti-Muslim, we're anti-Islam, right? And anti-Muslim hatred is a real thing, that it does exist in society, and it should be fought against. So this is the second category. Third categorization. Every time let's look at this case and categorize it in two different possibilities. This woman could have done this because she hates Muslims. What should be our position right now? Our position should be, we don't know. Okay, second category is that this woman could be doing this because she is mentally ill. Maybe she attacked that children, not because it's a Muslim child, but because she just was hurting somebody. Again, is this a correct conclusion? We don't know. It's sometimes better for you to take the position of, I don't know, right? And here's what I would guess. If this is a mentally ill woman who attacked this child, because she's mentally ill, not because this is an anti-Muslim attack. I assume many of these Muslims in the United States, or for example, the Care Organization, are going to be like, oh my God, anti-Muslim hatred being ignored. So just be careful for that for people not to do that to you. We recognize anti-Muslim hatred as a real thing that does exist. If we're skeptical about this case being anti-Muslim hatred, don't let people brand you as a bigot who recognizes hatred and attacks against other people, but not this one. We are evidence-based. So people might come and say like, oh, if this was a Jewish girl, you guys would be like, oh my God, anti-Semitic attack against a Jewish girl. No, if we see evidence, you remember we had just a news item about, a Jewish girl being RAPE'd. Susie, when she was mentioning this news, she was showing skepticism about which one of these news items, which one of these news sources are a credible news source. She wasn't sure about it. She said, I couldn't verify if this was a credible news source or not. She was skeptical. So we show skepticism there as well, right? But it seems for that case, there seems to have been enough evidence to show that this was an anti-Semitic attack. Many different credible news sources were saying, yes, this attack happened to that girl because it was revealed that she was Jewish. So we were more confident in saying that was anti-Jewish. Here, we have nobody is reporting why this happened. We don't have, if they are, we haven't seen it. This could be because she's Muslim. It could be not because she's Muslim.
What are you talking? I'm sorry. I have to disagree. What are you talking about? There's plenty of reporting about why this happened. They were racially and religiously abused before a physical altercation occurred. And that's clear.
Okay, so wait, what? I
don't hear believe that part. So sorry,
No, tell me that item. I'm saying, tell me what happened. There was a racial altercation before this happened. Sorry, I'll change my position.
According to the reports that I have read, before the physical attack occurred, she was verbally harassing and assaulting these people, filled with slurs and hatred, commenting on their religion and their ethnicity. So that's a reason to treat this with suspicion.
Okay, here's an opportunity for me to demonstrate how easily I will switch my position. Actually, okay, because when you were saying that, I was paying attention. This is actually good that I didn't hear that part, because now this is a good opportunity for me to show that I'm not married to a position, right? Because when you were reading that part, I was highlighting the comments, so I missed that part. So it's good that I missed that part, so I could demonstrate that with that information, I could go with like, okay, now my understanding of what happened makes it this being based on hatred toward because of the girl being Muslim a lot more credible. So I'm glad actually I didn't hear that part, because I show that as soon as you have the slightest amount of evidence that makes one position a little bit heavier, I would go with that.
Sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Now, does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It does. It makes complete sense. And here's the thing. I wanted to highlight this news for one reason. I want people to pay attention to the people who are treating this with more suspicion than they would for any other crime that occurred against anyone else. Can you say Armin is talking his way out of not listening?
No, let me respond to that. This is not fair. You have no idea how many things I'm doing at the same time when Susie's talking. Okay, this is not fair. I am trying to listen, read the news, and highlight your comments, read your comments all in real time. If I miss something, that is not fair for you to blame that on me. Okay, but anyways.
Oh my God. But what's so funny is that like I have no issue with the multitasking, and Armin does. And so it actually took me a very long time to cut Armin some slack, because he can't multitask as easily as me. So I used to be very hard on him.
Nobody could multitask. It's a myth. People lie when they say they're multitasking.
I know that in the technical sense. I'm using it
Right.
colloquially, Armin. Come on, people know what I mean. Anyways,
Yeah, okay.
so basically, I want people to really pay attention to the people that cannot take this on for face value on the basis of the evidence available to us. If you're treating this with extreme suspicion because of the identities of the people involved, I want you to check yourself, or other people, I want you to pay attention to who is engaging in that behavior. We should be able to recognize that this is an abhorrent crime against a child, against an entire family, for completely bigoted in horrible reasons. There is no, and I think a mistake that kind of liberals make sometimes is to like actually assume rationality. Like we can't always assume complete rationality. Like what is a motivation? Who says that there is no good motivation to do something like this, right? I also want to point out, let me make a point really quickly, is that anyone who is, oh my God, there are people in the live chat right now who are being straight up dumb. And their contention right now is that we described this child as Muslim in this news report. If that is your contention, you're being fucking stupid. Because let me be clear. Sure, a 3-year-old has no idea or no understanding about what Islam is and cannot be an informed believer and have bought into an ideology, yada, yada, yada. The point being that the motivation as reported for this attack was the nature of the family's religious identity. Whether or not a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old, the brother who was also attacked, is actually a practicing, believing Muslim is irrelevant to the fact that this is reportedly the reason why they were abused and attacked by the perpetrator. So it's totally appropriate to describe it as such. Don't be so freaking pedantic over something like this. It's stupid. Like, what's the point? So that just really pisses me off. Like that.
So
that's your concern.
Yeah. So we're using language in the way most people use it because the whole point of using words is to communicate. And when other people say like a 3-year-old Muslim, the understanding is that it's a 3-year-old inner Muslim family with those ideals being surrounded by those ideas. I mean, it's how people categorize them. And we're just using the same vocabulary that the rest of society uses just so that we could, communicate, or else. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I understand why some people want to fight that battle and say that we shouldn't be using those words, but it's kind of pedantic to basically come. I mean, you have to pick your battles. Like we're like, for example, using the word Islamophobia, we try to fight that one. But if we want to keep policing every word how it's used, then it's going to be hard to communicate about anything. Sometimes we just have to use the words the way that it's used mostly by society. But I have a slight disagreement with you regarding the motivation, because when we're asking for what the motivation was, that doesn't mean that it's claiming that there is a rational motivation for this. A motivation could be an irrational motivation. Like, for example, when I say like, why did she do that? I'm not suggesting there's any reasonable reason for her to do that, but there's obviously a reason. It could be an irrational reason, but there's always a reason. So looking for a reason or a motivation is not suggesting that if there's a rationality behind such an act. It's looking for an explanation, not a justification. Asking for explanations is not the same as asking for a justification. I think that's pretty clear, right?
Okay, you know what? Fair enough. People want to try to understand really horrific, unexplainable things like this. I can appreciate that. What I'm just trying to say is some things I don't think are understandable. Oh, thank you, Kenny, for the sweet comment in the super chat saying thanks for all your hard work, Armin and Susanna. Thank you, Kenny. Well, thank you. There's a lot of nonsense we need to fight. on all sides.
Oh, we have a whole bunch of other super chats, actually.
Yeah. Moral of the story is, guys, Muslims can be and are legitimately victimized around the world. We can't ignore that that's a fact. And people are pretending like it's all lies and bullshit. And that's just not true. And I want to call it out. If you can't have sympathy for this child and treat it without suspicion,
yes,
I need you to look in the mirror.
Yeah, here's the thing: there are some people who are incapable of having sympathy for somebody who's a Muslim, and I want to say, even if you're one of those people, I mean, I don't know, you're a psychopath, but you're a monster. But even if your motivations are purely anti-Islamic and you don't care about Muslims at all or their well-being or anything like that, even from a strategic sense, to be properly anti-Islam, it doesn't make sense to be anti-Muslim, because Islam feeds upon the suffering and blood of Muslims. The more Muslims suffer, the more Muslims are killed or threatened or attacked, the faster Islam will grow. Islam uses Muslims, their misery and their suffering, it eats them to grow. So even if you just want to be purely anti-Islamic, it doesn't make sense for you to not be against Muslim suffering. Does that make sense?
It does. Chuck Norris Gun Club has lost the plot and is saying hate can be a motive, but what is the crime? Why not assault, battery, attempt, and homicide if the story is true? She has been charged with attempted capital murder. She has been charged with injury to a child. People are asking for her to be charged with a hate crime. She hasn't been yet. People are saying, based on the evidence available, this is clearly a hate crime. If you have a contention with what a hate crime is and is not in that category as a penalty under the law, that's a different matter. That's a different matter about if you even believe that a specific hate crime is a real thing. This woman is being charged with attempted capital murder. So if the story is true.
Wait, would this person be like Chuck Norris? Would you be as skeptical about this story being true if this was a Muslim woman trying to drown a Jewish 3-year-old? Like,
I doubt he would
can
be
you
so
ask yourself if
suspicious.
it was the exact same news item, but we just announced that this was a Muslim woman trying to drown a 3-year-old, like, would you be this skeptical? Or because you seem like extremely biased when it comes to, anyways.
Oh my God. And just as a quick comment, Daniel Spivak is saying, has there been an increase in anti-Muslim attacks since October 7th, or is that bullshit like Islamophobia? Yes, across the world, in many countries, there has been a spike in anti-Muslim actions and anti-Arab incidents at large. Yes, there has. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
I remember the numbers for both anti-Muslim attacks and anti-Jewish attacks both increased. If I remember correctly, anti-Muslim attacks increased by 3 times the amount it used to be, and anti-Jewish attacks increased by 14 times. I don't know if these were the actual numbers, but I remember the anti-Jewish attacks peaked more. But both of them increased. Both anti-Muslim attacks and anti-Jewish attacks both increased after October 7th.
Yeah, and it varies from country to country, but those trends I've seen across several countries. Okay, so let's go to the super chats. John Bundeck sent a super chat saying, in a jungle full of totalitarian monsters, liberal democracy needs teeth. Robert Conquest. That's a sick quote. I think y'all would like him. No to parochialism, rage, and hate. Let me look this up really quick.
Oh my God, that's the most beautiful quote I've ever heard in my life. I think I was going to describe my excitement in a way that is not YouTube friendly.
British American historian and poet. Let's see what he has on Amazon. I might add a few of these to my wish list.
That is such a powerful. Okay.
Ooh.
I'm gonna get that tattooed.
That's going on my wall.
Yeah.
Okay, so next super chat is from Asian American saying, hate the belief, love the believer. I understand the sentiment, but that's just too similar to hate the sin, love the sinner. And I hate that mentality so much.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's how I would improve it. Okay, hate the belief, don't hate the believer, because you cannot demand for me to love an entire group of people. This is what I never understand from Christianity. Okay, love is something special, unique, and specific for a few individuals in your life. If you here's what I would claim. Okay, if you love everybody, or if you love millions of people, then you have devalued love, and I would say that you don't love anybody. If you think anybody is capable of loving millions of people, then you don't know what love is. Okay, you don't understand. So when Christians say, "Oh, love everybody, love your enemy," I don't think they understand the meaning of love. Love is so special and unique that you're incapable of loving more than a few number of peoples in your life. Okay, so do not love the believer, care for the believer, maybe, or don't hate the believer. Hate the belief, don't hate the believer is as far as I would go. Yeah.
And okay, that brings us to the end of our super chats. Okay, so let's actually go to the not horrific news item for the day. This is very, very interesting.
Chuck Norris.
And kind of unexpected. I mean, unless you
speak
Persian, then maybe you would have an awareness of this. But okay, so are you ready to clap? We can clap this time. Everyone, get your
clapping finally, guys! I'm
excited.
This is the one. This is the news I was talking about getting excited over. Okay, cool. Next news.
Tajikistan declares war on the hijab. Tajikistan, a predominantly Muslim country, has taken a controversial stance by passing a law banning the hijab in certain Islamic holiday celebrations, despite 96% of its population identifying as Muslim. President Emomali Rahman approved the bill, which labels the hijab a quote-unquote alien garment and imposes hefty fines on the offenders. The legislation, aimed at promoting a secular national identity, also prohibits the practice of Eid, in where children seek money during Islamic festivals. Suleiman Dazafzoda, head of religion committee, justified the ban on Eid as a measure to ensure proper education and the safety of children during Ramadan and Eid al-Adha. This move has sparked international criticism, with Corey Saylor of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE for short, stating, quote, banning the hijab is a violation of religious freedom, and such bans on religious attire should have no place in any nation that respects the rights of its people. The ban reflects a growing trend among some Muslim-majority countries in Central Asia and Eastern Europe to restrict Islamic garments in public spaces, contrasting sharply with countries like Iran and Afghanistan that mandate hijab use. So this is very, very interesting.
This is a Muslim-majority country, people. A Muslim-majority country. Tajikistan is declaring war on hijab in a country with more than 90% of the population being Muslim. Okay, but go on.
And I was very excited to talk about this, Armin, because behind the scenes, you have talked to me a little bit about how there is a push against Islamization in Tajikistan. And I was so interested in this, but there wasn't a lot being reported in English media for me to really dig into and investigate. And then this came forward, so it gave me the perfect excuse to talk about it. So I would love to hear like what you have been aware of and what has been going on that has led you to like be aware of this trend. Because based on the research I was doing for this news segment, it seems that there has been an unofficial kind of ban on hijab for many years now. Now, this is just kind of formalizing it. There has also been actions taken against men with beards and men being forced to shave their beards. Now, based on what I was reading, it seems as if it's really just the men that have the big bushy beards, not, if it's very close to the face and groomed. And it's because my understanding is that it's seen as basically a foreign thing. It's seen as a foreign identity. It's seen essentially as more Arab than actually Tajik. And this is a push towards more national identity. And this is not only about hijab, but there has been other issues against women wearing like mini skirts, for example. Like, that is seen as against national identity. And they want to push towards promoting a Tajik dress and Tajik national dress. Now, what that actually means is up to interpretation. But this is a push towards a national secular identity. So I would love, love, love to hear about what you know about this, Armin.
Yeah, so there has been a growing concern with Islamization in Tajikistan, especially because Tajikistan's government think that this is a major source of foreign threats to their countries. They have seen how countries like Islamic Republic of Iran and other countries use Islam as a way to use the country's political and freedom of speech or freedom of religion and different other institutions to come culturally enter the country, change the demographic, change the voter base, get some political power, and influence the country in a way that that country becomes they have leverage. So, for example, if the Islamic Republic of Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, or other countries, if they want to have in the same way that the Chinese government uses the Confucianist centers, try to use them or try to use TikTok or other tools, or for example, in the same way that Russia uses RT or their other media to try to have leverage in other countries' way of thinking or their culture so that they could change their politics. Islamic countries use Islam as a way to be able to have leverage over the opinions of the citizens of those countries and change their politics. In fact, Tajikistan is very, very concerned about Shia centers, Shia in Tajikistan as a way for the Islamic Republic of Iran trying to gain influence, right? And basically what Tajikistan is doing is what Reza Shah and Mohammad Reza Shah were trying to do with Iran. There is the Iranian culture, and then there is Islamic culture. And Reza Shah, more effectively than Mohammad Reza Shah, for example, was trying to, bring back, re-establish Iran's culture at the expense of the Islamic culture, because and Mohammad Reza Shah did that also with, you saw the videos I sent you when it comes to the whole demonstrations right next to the Cyrus the Great's tomb, and those the 5,000. Anyways, I'm not gonna get into the details, but again, this is a battle of cultures, and countries like Tajikistan, they think like the Islamic culture is something that is foreign to this land, that is being brought by other places. What is natural, what belongs to this land is basically the Tajik culture, and they are not only fighting against everything that is Islamic or looks like Islamic, but they're also promoting their own dress code, right? Their own way of. If I show you, like for example, what Tajik women look like and what they wear, their traditional clothes is very colorful. It's very you can see that this is something very different from what Islam wants to promote. And basically, I think they looked at, if you look at other countries like Afghanistan before and after Islamism taking over the entire country. You could see, like, for example, Afghan women used to wear such their own custom traditions that used to be custom clothes that used to be so colorful, so bright, so beautiful, so alive, you know. And then now, if you look, you can see that if Afghanistan is ruined right now, it's partly because they don't come with force at the beginning. They don't come with, you know, everything that ruins the country so obviously at the beginning. At first, it's an ideological takeover, and Tajikistan is attempting to not let it get to the part where they have to fight Islam more aggressively. They're trying to make sure the phase one doesn't happen, like the Meccan phase doesn't happen, so that they don't have to fight the Medina phase. Right? Tajikistan is basically looking at Pakistan, for example. India used to not be Islamic, and now if you look at the part of India that became Pakistan, and now you could compare Pakistan with India, what was this? This was at first this was an ideological takeover, right? And look at what's happening in Europe right now. Tajikistan is doing something that many people want to see happen in Europe, because they know if they let a cultural or an ideological attempt at threatening your country is phase one. Eventually, they want to do something a lot more direct. And if you look at what's happening in Europe right now, you could see why they might be very concerned. And again, they have seen, you know, they know the Islamic Republic of Iran. They know the attempts that they're actually directly. They know their plans. They know that when they're spreading Islam in other countries, they have actually a plan. Like, this is not just because, like, out of their attempts to just, like, oh, it's good for people to be familiar with Islam, and it's good people for us. This is just our religious duty to introduce people to Islam. This is actually a political attempt, in the same way that when China opens Confucianist centers in other countries, this is not just like, oh, for tourism, for introducing people to Chinese cultures. This is a political move. This is a political attempt. It's an attack. This is what these mosques are. This is what these Hosseinias are. And Tajikistan is, like, trying to deal with this problem aggressively. What do you think about all of this, by the way, Susie? I also have something I could read that I just went and got.
I mean, we should be under no delusion that Tajikistan is not controlled by an authoritarian dictatorial regime. Like, let's be clear.
Right.
That's important to acknowledge. So I was trying to do a little bit of investigating by poking around the Tajik language version of Radio Free Europe. And, you know, of course, Google Translate can only get you so far. But part of what I understand is that it's not, based on some reporting, it doesn't even seem like it's entirely all hijab, or maybe this was only under when it was kind of an unofficial thing, but it was some forms of hijab which were seen as not Tajik styles of hijab. And then also it was seen as a warning sign if a woman was wearing a black hijab specifically, which I thought was interesting. And then again, what I mentioned about people who are being heavily bearded as also being seen as a warning sign. I think one thing that we need to be clear about is that historically, moves like this haven't really worked. So there are many things that, for example, we really like Ataturk for. There are things that we like Reza Shah for, in Mohammed Reza Shah. But Armin, you've repeatedly and consistently criticized their unilateral moves to ban hijab as ineffective and, in fact, fueling persecutory delusion.
Well, actually, I changed my mind on that. Because if you actually go look at what Reza Shah did, he didn't ban the hijab. That's a lie that I believed from the Islamic Republic. What they actually did is they banned the burqa, what Reza Shah did, and he also banned the hijab in only specific places, not the entirety of the country. It was more closer to what France is doing, like, not completely. There are some parts that might be a little bit of a overreach, but for that time, it wasn't like, compared to other people Reza Shah wasn't doing anything that much aggressive. But it's closer to what France is doing right now. It wasn't like people were having their hijab in most of Iran during Reza Shah's time, as in most of the country. So I think what we heard about what Reza Shah did in banning the hijab was an exaggeration of what he actually did, right? So when they're saying in here, I want to be able to be fair. I don't like government overreach. I don't like government telling people what they can and what they cannot wear. Everything I said was not a normative, it was a descriptive explanation of what's happening, right? I'm saying what they think. For me to be able to judge whether this is a government overreach or this is fair, I have to ask, like, what are they banning? Like, how are they exactly, like, where is this ban? Like, women cannot walk with hijab in the streets. How far are they going with this? Can you go into details? Like, any hijab anywhere in Tajikistan, walking the streets is illegal?
1 second. Let me find my better source on this. Sorry, it's loading.
I'm trying to figure this out as well. By the way, while you do that, let me show people some images of what Tajiks look. They celebrate the Nowruz. Did you know? This is what
I do, because when
Iran...
my city hall had a Nowruz celebration, I went to the city hall and it was like a lot of Persians there, a lot of Iranians, but then there was a heavy presence of Uzbeks and Tajiks there. It was very interesting. I'm like, I actually didn't know my city had a population of Tajiks and Uzbeks. But this is a side note, but I am obsessed with Uzbek textile tradition. It is one of the most beautiful I have ever seen in the entire world, which obviously has a heavy influence on Tajik textile tradition, which you can see here. The Susanna technique is so cool. I'm obsessed with it. The ikat dyeing technique, let me shut up. I'm a little bit of a textile nerd.
No, let me just, don't get into so much. I just wanted to mention, this is their actual culture. This is what the government is trying to preserve. And they think that this is what they will lose if they don't fight back against Islamization. And they are, I don't know, we could talk about whether their methodology is correct or not, but their concerns is pretty accurate. I can see why they're concerned. Okay, this is what they're trying to preserve. If you go look at what happened to Afghanistan and Iran before and after, you'll see why these concerns are legitimate. Right, but did you find?
Oh, by the way, apparently some Islamic clerics in Afghanistan declared a jihad because of this. Just FYI.
Mm-hmm. So, wow, it seems like they went on with a full ban based on what I'm saying.
Yeah, based on my familiarity, I haven't seen anything saying that it's in specific areas or only for government officials doing government business or anything like that.
The law passed by the Tajikistan parliament in June 2024 imposes a complete ban on the wearing of hijabs. This is more than France. They went more anti-Islamic than France in a country with 96% Muslims.
Some people are saying that this is just a hangover from kind of a Soviet era.
Wow. Okay. Look at it. This includes a prohibition on importing, selling, or promoting hijab. Okay, this is a lot more aggressive than I'm wearing hijabs in public spaces. So you can't even promote the hijab. Okay, this is too far. This is definitely too far. This is, guys, when you go more anti-hijab than France, then you have gone too far. Okay, I liked when it comes to secularism or laïcité and hijab and everything, I like the French model. I think when you go more than France, you've gone too far.
Well, Armin, I don't know what you were expecting from a totalitarian dictator. Like,
okay, but totalitarians usually are concerned with the opinions of their population, because you cannot be, just because you're a dictator, that doesn't mean you're immune completely from the opinions of your. How is this being received in Tajikistan? I wonder. This is
well,
insanely,
it's very hard to get reporting out of there.
So penalties for violating the ban. The law imposes the following penalties for violating the hijab ban. Individual fines up to $747. Legal entities get fined up to $3,724. Government officials and religious authorities fines up to $5,400 and $5,700 respectively. Rationale behind the ban. The Tajikistan government views the hijab as foreign clothing that is incompatible with Tajik national culture and identity. President Rahmon has been campaigning against the hijab since 2015, citing concerns about Islamic extremism and the need to maintain the country's secular character. Okay, so you're saying it's totalitarian. He's the president. Are you calling their elections fake? Like, people voted for this guy. Do they have like actual elections? Like, how is he a totalitarian if people have voted for him? And how does a person who has
I'm no expert.
Here's the question.
Based on my understanding of what happens in
Let me finish my question
Tajikistan, it
first.
does not seem like a free society.
Okay. How does a person who has campaigned against hijab get elected as president in a country with 96% Muslim? Can you explain that to me? You know what? I have to get into the.
Again, based on my understanding, these are not free and fair elections.
I need to get. This is so bizarre. I need to get to the bottom of this. Let me see. Well, I need to. What the hell? Oh, okay. Can you read some of the chats on what people are people against this, or is there a community supporting Tajikistan's government on this or against it? What are they saying?
I don't support their government in general. Let's be clear.
Support this specific, not their government, this specific position, this specific thing.
So
as our community. Yeah.
Earlier in the chat, Wikar was saying, I don't agree with this being good news, because we were like, oh, some good news, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure we should force women to wear or not wear garments. That should be the woman's choice. Let's be clear. We are here for free choice at Atheist Republic. When we were referring to good news, we were talking about the fact that all the stories we've talked about today have been quite dark and depressing. And this is the only story that does not involve someone being murdered or abused. So in our book, that's good news. Also, it's very interesting. Yusuf Dumphy sent a super chat saying, is Tajikistan trying to be more culturally ironic?
Ironic? Well, that would be, I wouldn't like that. I don't like that language, because that would suggest that their Tajikistan's actual culture is not their own and it belongs to another foreign country. I don't like, I do think that they're, so they have both Zoroastrian roots.
Yeah, so that's Iran's what they mean. Like, ironic is more than a national identity. It refers to like a shared historic group of people or a phenotype, even like an ironic group of languages is a thing. I think that's what he's referring to. Like, I refer to.
Can we refer to it as Zoroastrian so that we don't, given how Tajikistan seems to be sensitive about foreign influence, maybe the culture that they are trying to highlight to become more of their own nation, because part of this sensitivity against Islamism is Iranian influence. So if you try to, the culture that they are you trying to highlight to make sure that they are their own independent country, if you attribute that to Iran as well, I don't think that will work very well for them. Maybe call it Zoroastrian rather than Iranic, right?
And
Okay, so-
John Bundock is sent another super chat saying employment division versus Smith is good and relevant to me. Oh, I'm familiar with this case. Let me remind myself what this is about.
So let me give you some highlights about my research, okay? The Tajikistan government, led by President Rahmon, has been actively promoting a secular Tajik national identity over religious Islamic one. This is seen as a way to counter the threat of Islamic extremism and maintain stability in the country. Tajikistan experienced a brutal civil war in the 1990s between the secular forces and the Islamist group. This has made the government wary of any public displays of religiosity, which it views as potential precursor to political instability. Tajikistan borders Afghanistan and Iran, both of which have significant Islamist influence. The government is concerned about the spread of radical Islam from these neighbors and is using the hijab ban as a way to assert its control. President Rahmon has been in power since 1994 and has systematically marginalized or banned Islamist political parties. The hijab ban is part of his broader effort to cement his authoritarian rule. Okay, so you're right about this guy being authoritarian, and eliminate potential sources of opposition. For many Tajik voters, okay, so this is why would people in Tajikistan accept this, given that they're Muslim? So for many Tajik voters, economic development, stability, and security may be more pressing concerns than religious freedoms. Okay, as long as the government can deliver on these priorities, some may be willing to overlook restrictions on religious expression. Oh, okay. So that's very interesting. But about the elections not being free and fair, you are correct about that. The government has cracked down on opposition parties and activists, imprisoning or intimidating political opponents. This undermines freedom of association and expression. The only genuine opposition candidate, which I cannot pronounce his name, Bobonazura, I don't know, was forced to drop out of the 2013 presidential election due to pressure from the authorities. International election observers have never judged a presidential or parliamentary election in Tajikistan as free and fair. The government is accused of rigging elections and putting political and financial pressure on opposition parties. Voters expressed little enthusiasm for elections, with one saying, "My vote doesn't make a difference. We already know who will win." This suggests a lack of genuine competition. The main opposition is Islamic. The main opposition, which is the Islamic Renaissance Party, was banned as a terrorist organization in 2015, leaving the Social Democratic Party as the only real opposition group. Okay, that gives us a lot of context. What do you think? Yeah. Oh, by the way, let me tell you the good part of this, because people are like, this is not good news. You guys are for free speech. You guys are anti-tyranny. Why do you support this? Okay, so this regime is bad.
Do you support
this government is bad. No, I don't. I'm just going to give you a silver lining. Okay? This regime I'm against this regime based on what I just read. Here's the thing. As Iranians, let me tell you why I was more hopeful with this, okay? Because a lot of Iranians are extremely anti-Islamic, and a lot of Iranians constantly show give us good news from Tajikistan, right? So They show us how much they celebrate their ancient culture, their Zoroastrian heritage, their other cultural heritage, how Islamism is on the downturn in Tajikistan, and there's so many videos coming out of Tajikistan that gets around among Iranian people. They're like, oh my God, wish this was happening in Iran. Look how the Iran could have been if we allowed the things that are happening in Tajikistan happening in Iran. So a lot of Iranians share so many good celebratory videos of things happening in Tajikistan. As an Iranian myself who follows Iranian social media, I have been influenced by that, and I was a little bit more optimistic about Tajikistan until today, now that I read all that context. Okay. I'm against this authoritarian regime. I'm against this law. However, just a bit of a silver lining, this normalizes for other more sane countries in Europe, if they want to take other approaches against Islamic takeover, given that now we have an Islamic, a country that is a majority Muslim, taking such an extreme position, at least it helps taking less radical positions seem less extreme. Do you know what I mean? Like France's, for example, if other European countries want to take a bit harsher positions against Islamism, if we have this as a reference as something too far, but as a point of comparison, we can use it to normalize other positions that are sane, but is seen by society as extreme. Does that make sense? Is that not a good
I don't
silver
know
lining?
if like having your point of comparison being authoritarian dictator is gonna be a good thing.
not as we were gonna do that, as in like, well, we're not gonna do that. That is too extreme. You know what I mean? Like, so by saying, like, by calling it as too extreme and saying, look, this is how far we should go, right? So, for example, we could say, I know, banning hijab in school, for example, that makes sense. You're like, oh no, that's too extreme. Because if you didn't have that, you will be, if you're the most extreme in suggestion, you are seen as a radical. But now, if you're concerned, if you are seen as a radical, but you call out other people as radical that have gone farther than you are seen less of a radical when you call some other people out as radicals that have gone farther away than you. Does that make sense? They're like, I'm not the radical. They're the radical. This is actually the correct position. Yeah, somebody's saying, like, I think, yeah, don't go full Tajikistan. Like, we haven't gone full Tajikistan, okay? So don't call us radical. We haven't gone as far as Tajikistan. That's what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Greenneck is saying exactly, Armin, we should be less afraid of the subject because Tajikistan shows that it's a subject that the whole world is wrestling with.
Yes. And
well, I think the better example is don't go full Xinjiang. Don't go full
but
CCP.
Also,
that's even more extreme.
I also don't want to completely dismiss the concern of the government. So again, I'm against this government because they're authoritarian. I'm against them because they're telling their citizens what to wear. They're also telling their citizens not to promote the hijab, so they're limiting people's freedom of speech. That's insane. Like, not only you can't wear the hijab, you cannot even go and say, like, well, we should be able to wear the hijab. You can't even say that because that would be the promotion of hijab. So that's all insane. Obviously, that's all insane. But there's a part of their position that I don't want to completely dismiss everything that they're saying, because the part that they're concerned about Islamism taking over their country, the concern is legitimate. The solution is not correct, but let's not dismiss that they have a valid concern. I mean, I know the Islamic Republic of Iran is definitely attempting to use Islamic centers in Tajikistan to exert its political influence in Tajikistan. I know for a fact that that's what they're trying to do. So the concern is correct.
Oh, I mean, we're under no delusions about the dangers of Islamism. I think we can all agree on that.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Oh, we got a few more super chats. Oh, Mithras Revisited gifted 5 Atheist Republic memberships to people. That's awesome. Thank you, Mithras, which is a good reminder. If
Thank
you want to be a member, come join us on YouTube and go in the button down below, the join button. You can come become a member, support our work, support everything we do, and you get access to our exclusive member emojis and also a bunch of exclusive members only content that Armin has put out, which is actually an even better reminder because right now we have over 800 people watching, but about 600 of them are on Twitter. So if you are watching this on Twitter, come join us on YouTube, Atheist Republic channel, go subscribe, go click the notification bell, like this stream. Things are much better on the YouTube side of things because you can engage in the live chat. We can respond to you. You can become a member, become part of the community. If there's other ways that you want to engage with the community, you can join our Discord. Link is in the description in our YouTube video. And also, thank you to everyone who is supporting our work. People that support us financially, if you're interested in doing that to make sure that we can keep putting out this content that apparently a lot of people find valuable, you can support us on PayPal. Again, link is in the description on YouTube, on Patreon, Super Chats, many other ways to make our work continue. And, or like we said, we promote financial stability, freedom, and independence. Okay. That should always come first. So if you are not able to support financially, all you have to do is hit that like, hit that subscribe, feed that algorithm, leave a comment, because there is only one God that we pray to, Armin, and that is the YouTube algorithm God. And every day we recognize its glory and its splendor. So please help us feed that algorithm. Help us tithe. Yes. Put the fear of the algorithm gods into you. Help us feed the algorithm. Leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite segment was this week, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with. And thank you for being part of this community. We got a few more super chats to close out the show. John gave 2 super chats saying, what should Tajiks do? Ask the Baltics and Ukrainians. And also thought on the code of personal status in Tunisia. Well, I'm not familiar with this. Let's do a quick look. Code of personal status, Tunisia. Okay. Code of Personal Status in Tunisia is a series of progressive Tunisian laws aiming at the institution of equality between men and women in a number of areas. It was promulgated by the Beylical Decree in 1956 and came into effect in 1957. Applies to Muslim Tunisians only. This is...
We don't know much about this to be able to comment.
I can't give any comment when this is my first time hearing about this.
Yeah.
The code outlawed polygamy, set minimum ages for marriage, required mutual consent for marriage, and allowed either spouse to file for divorce in a secular court.
Seems like a step in the right direction, but we don't based on what I've heard so far, seems like pretty good.
Yeah, seems like a few motions to liberalize and promote individual rights, specifically the individual liberty of women.
Here's the thing. Did it make Islamists angry? If it did, then it's probably a good. Then it's probably that's how you could judge. If it made Islamists in Tunisia angry, it's probably a good law.
Okay. Oh, we got a super chat from Unicorn. Thank you. Saying, as always, thanks, as always, Susan and Armin. Thank you, Unicorn. Thank you for joining us. And also celebrating their membership for 8 months. Thank you for supporting us and saying, to the YouTube algorithm gods. Yes. Thank you to the YouTube algorithm gods, for they have shown us mercy. Actually, let's see if they showed us mercy. Armin, are we still monetized?
Oh, yeah, I can check. Refresh.
Everyone. Let us
Yes, we are.
raise.
Amazing. We have to. Yes. 3 hours into the show, we're still
They
monetized.
truly are merciful.
But
The
to be clear,
algorithm
guys,
has been merciful to us once
we
again.
used to be demonetized like at least halfway into the show, but now we still get demonetized, but for some reason right after the show is over. So throughout the show we're not demonetized. Once the show is over, few minutes after the show is over, we're almost guaranteed to be demonetized. But the good news is that I appeal it and we get monetized. Usually we get monetized again, but by then we have lost most of it. It's better than before. It's not ideal given that we always get demonetized after the show, but it's so much better than before. Yeah.
Sometimes it wouldn't even make it through just the hellos and chit-chatting and info intros before we were demonetized. We're like, what did we do? It was just Armin and Susie saying hi to each other. Shit.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a very interesting comment. Just as a side note, Chuck McCormick is saying, I'm actually religious, but I find most atheists value life more because they see this life as the only one they will experience. I quite agree with most of your reviews. Exactly. You got to make the most of it. Yes. Which leads me
and it was
to
accurate because he said
mindset.
Because he said most. This is a person that is careful with their use of words, which I appreciate.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Oh, and Shami sent us a super chat. Thank you, Shami, saying thank you guys for your work. Thank you, Shami, for everything you do to support us. Well, we had to cover some hard things today, Armin, but I think it was worthwhile. I hope people found this to be valuable, maybe a little bit informative. And at the end of the day, I get to spend time with one of my favorite people. What's up?
Yes, even if it's 4 bad news and 1 not bad news, which I will clarify, the fact that I get to spend time with Susie and in front of all you guys and covering all this news that will always make it a pleasant experience, right? John clarified that Islamists hate it, so that means I can endorse that without checking any other more research. Thank you, John. And also, Green and Nick is saying that's a good yardstick. Yes, if Islamists hate it, it's probably a good law. And also, I want to clarify this before we go. Somebody was saying, Wikar was saying, I don't agree on this being a good news because we said like last news is good news. Well, can I be honest, guys? If people, based on the standards that we have on this channel, if people are not being murdered or tortured or RAPE'd, that is our standard for good news. Okay, so yeah, I do not like it when governments force people to limit freedom of speech or force them on what to wear. But again, we have a very low standard here when it comes to good news. Okay, so and then we're saying, I'm pretty sure we shouldn't force women to wear or not to wear garments. That's usually true in public places. I do think that there are certain contexts which is okay to tell both women and men what to wear, given that the job that they have, or if it's a government institution. In certain contexts, I think you should be able to tell men and women what to wear, but in public places and their own private homes, that's the only places that you shouldn't be able to tell them what to wear. But when you go to a police officer is told what to wear at their job, so we're not completely against telling people what to wear. Yeah, so there you go. Just wanted to address that as well.
Well, I had a good time today, and everyone make sure to subscribe and tune into our news show next week. I already have some juicy stories picked out. We'll be doing it again as always. And the Atheist Republic army is growing. We're growing quick. We went from 50K and we're approaching 60K fast. So I hope you guys are along for the ride.
Yeah, guys, we just celebrated our 50K and now we're getting 60. Like it was just recently that we celebrated our 50K. Like, how are we growing this fast? You know what it is? It's because you're liking the stream. It's because I'm serious. I'm not just. It's because you guys are actually liking the stream. Your likes actually make a difference. Okay, so please like the stream. And also, if you want to help more, leave a comment after the show is over. And if you really want to help more, please suggest this channel to more people. Go tell people to come subscribe to Atheist Republic on YouTube. Yes, let's of course.
Our next excuse me, Armin, our next benchmark is not 60K, it's 69K. Thank you,
Yes,
Daniel. You got our
of
head on
course.
straight.
Of course. I'm sorry.
Obviously.
Okay.
Come on.
Obviously. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next stream. Bye.
Bye.